Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting. Can I ask members when speaking to speak directly into the microphone? This will enable members and members of the public to hear. Can I remind members and members of the public to place their mobile phones to silent and to stand where possible when speaking? Can I also remind those members who wish to speak this evening to keep their hands up until acknowledged by the Chief Executive? I'd also like to remind members the meeting is being live streamed and we welcome members of the public in the gallery watching and listening to the council meeting tonight. I'd like to remind all members of the council's adopted code of conduct for councillors which you agreed to and are expected to adhere to. I'd now like to ask Father Anthony Cho to lead us in prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father in heaven, we ask you for your wisdom as we begin this meeting. We acknowledge that we need your wisdom and insight, and we welcome your presence among us. Guide us in our decisions and discussions, helping us to seek what is best for all involved. We trust in your perfect wisdom and ask that you direct our meetings according to your holy will. In the letter of St. James, it says, "If any one of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him." We claim this promise as we start our meeting and trust in your provision. Thank you for being with us always. And also we take some time to think about those who have suffered, especially those in countries that are not experiencing peace. We ask the Lord, the giver of all good things, that God will be able to grant them peace. And we also pray to the end of violence, of bloodshed. So together we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Thank you, Father Anthony. Item 1, apologies for absence. Please note the apologies received on page 1 of the order paper. I have received notification that Councillor Victoria Holloway is running late. Are there any further apologies for absence? Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to give Councillor Robert Gledhill's apologies and also Councillor Abbas. But if you allow me, Madam Mayor, I'd also like to tell the Chamber the wonderful news that Councillor Abbas's wife gave birth to a baby boy recently. So he's now father of a very, very happy father of a baby boy.
Thank you. Any other absences? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Gary Watson is working.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of July set out in the agenda on pages 9 to 18 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Is any member in disagreement with the accuracy of the minutes? Thank you. These minutes are approved. Item 3, items of urgent business. I have not agreed to any urgent items of business. Item 4, declaration of interests. Are there any declarations of interest to be made? Thank you. Item 5, announcements on behalf of the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. I'd like us all to take a moment and remember Thurrock's fallen of World War II on pages 5 of the agenda. They are Stonehouse, Frederick C., Broomfield, Victor A., Birch, Ralph, Revel, Raymond P., Otley, Henry W., Gillam, Alfred E., Greatrix, Percy, Lewis, Geoffrey T., Salisbury, Norman, Lynchbury, Ronald F., Grieg, Stanley G., Lano, Jack A., White, Ronald A.L. I have a second list because we didn't have an August meeting. Gregory, Thomas F., Gray, Edward G., Webb, Thomas B., Bridge, Albert, Geeves, James F., Tarry, Francis W., Daniels, James F., Brown, Bernard J., Baker, Albert Sidney, Andrews, Charles, Rogers, Griffith G., Spate, Headley J., Featherstone, Albert E., Birch, George J., Howard, Stanley C., Nye, Graham, Rose, James. I'm sad to announce the sad passing of Wynne, England. Wynne and her late husband Albert received the Freedom of the Borough in 2014 for their contribution to the civic life of the borough and their involvement in the Burma Stars organisation. It's understood that their children will continue to attend the Burma Star Rose Garden in Orsett. I'd like those that can stand to stand, please, as we hold 1 minute silence. I will now invite the leader to make his announcements.
Madam Mayor, I don't intend to make announcements on a regular basis unless there is something that's contemporaneous, but I did want to say just a word about Wynne England. Wynne and Albert were a wonderful, devoted couple. Wynne was a force of nature, an incredible sense of humour, somebody who would have you laughing out loud very, very quickly. She'd reached the age of 98, and I think as we mark Wynne's passing, we kind of remember that generation are now few and far between, and I think we should redouble our efforts to cherish those who are left. Madam Mayor, one other thing, if you crave my indulgence, I understand that over the summer, Councillor Jeffries got married, so can we just wish warm congratulations to him and to Darryl, and we wish you every happiness in the future.
Thank you. Item 6, public questions. Public questions can be found on page 19 of the agenda. I would ask those members of the public who have submitted questions to please read out their question when asked to do so. Councillor John Kent will respond to the public questions on Councillor Holloway's behalf, because she's been delayed. Question 1 from Mr. Pickett to Councillor Victoria Holloway.
Thank you very much.
Can you read your question, please?
The question is, can we, in London Road, Stanford Hope, have some cameras put up for noise pollution? Oh. Right. Because we have motorbikes and cars revving coming out the garage on London Road, and noise pollution, because it's unhealthy. I'm a lorry driver and I'm up at early hours of the morning to keep my eyes on, to not be sleeping at the wheel. And my wife is a care worker, so can't give medication through too much of it to the wrong people. So in the kind of way, you just want to be helpful to keep the noise down, and just everything else goes along there.
Thank you. So is your question really the last sentence? What measures can the council take? Do you want to read that last sentence to us and then we can get a response from...
Well, it's just for safety and for it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Leader, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Holloway is at a hospital governors meeting. She's on her way. Can I thank Mr Pickett for his question? It's really not easy coming into a chamber like this and asking questions. So, well done, and thank you for bringing it to us. Since receiving your question, we've been speaking with Essex Police. They've carried out some spot checks on some of the vehicles that were particularly noisy and found that they were very noisy, but they were roadworthy. Recently, Essex Police have put a speed camera on Southend Road in Stamford, so we're working with them to see if we can persuade them to do the same on London Road. And while speaking to them, the police have undertaken to visit the petrol station where these vehicles congregate, to speak to the people who operate the petrol station to see if there's anything they can do to help, and they've said that they'll keep it under review and go back. It's not perfect, but we will keep it under review. Thank you.
Would you like to ask a supplementary question, Mr Pickett?
Thank you very much. It's just, I just want to be...
No, that's fine, thank
all
you.
I just want to do is just keep the noise down and the speeding down. That's all it is. That's all I want to be done.
Thank you. You can return to your seat if you like. Question 2 from Mr Perrin to Councillor Victoria Holloway again. Mr Perrin, please come forward and read out your question as set out on page 19 of the agenda. Take your time, Mr Perrin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know who I'm addressing my question to.
It will be Councillor Holloway, but Councillor Kent is going to respond because she's late.
Thank you. Now the council is charging £80 per annum to empty garden waste bins every fortnight. Would you consider reinstating weekly emptying of the said bins?
Thank you. Councillor Kent, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it's always, of course, nice to see Mr Perrin. Within the constraints of being a bankrupt council, we do, of course, keep a careful eye and monitor the way services are being provided and the way services are being used and taken up. And careful monitoring of the collection of the garden waste indicates that most waste bins are only ever about half full during the summer, during that peak gardening season, which would indicate that the current 240 litre bin, because that's the size of it, is actually doing the job for most residents that have taken it up. So yes, of course, we'll keep it under review, but at the moment there'll be no plans to introduce a more regular service.
Thank you. Mr. Perrin, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. I understand that only tenants who pay the £80 charge will have their garden waste bins emptied, subject to a proof of payment document being displayed on the bin. Those who choose not to pay will have no choice other than to initiate their own method of disposal of garden waste. Whilst most people will dispose of their garden waste responsibly, others may not be so obliging. Since the council announced the introduction of the £80 charge for each garden waste bin, I have noticed an increase in my area of the burning of such waste, even setting fire to overgrown open ground. This is an environmental hazard, to say nothing of the nuisance caused and the possible threat to the health, safety and well-being of those affected by such fires. No doubt some people will resort to fly tipping as a means of disposal of their garden waste, or dump it in the garden waste bins of those who have paid their £80 charge. There must be a better and fairer system for dealing with this problem, a system that does not adversely impact upon the environment. With this in mind, will the council consider providing every household with a proper means of disposal of garden waste, i.e. a waste bin that is regularly emptied by a council-provided collection service? I suggest the service could be paid for by the imposition of a small charge to the householder. Furthermore, this charge would only apply for a weekly collection during the months of April, May, June, July, August and September. The emptying of garden waste bins would be suspended for the months of October, November, December, January, February and March, and no charge should be made during that period. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you want to reply to that?
So Madam Mayor, the first part of Mr. Perrin's question about people who aren't as responsible as most of us is well made, and we would always ask people to dispose of whatever rubbish it is in a responsible manner. As far as what you're asking for is actually almost reversing the decision that's been made. That really isn't something that we can do. Putting together the charge for the brown bin and moving to fortnightly, weekly collections of everything else saves the council something in the region of £2.8 million. That's the equivalent of something like 4% on council tax. And as a bankrupt council, that isn't something that we can undo. We do, however, have to keep these things under surveillance. We have to keep them under scrutiny. And I would ask that the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee, when we've had the first full year of the new bin system, carries out a piece of work to see just how it's gone and what changes might be made in the future.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Perrin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You can now take your seat back in the public gallery. Thank you. Item 7, petitions from members of the public and councillors. I can confirm that no notices of petition have been received. Item 8, update report in respect of those petitions presented at council and council offices. This report can be found on page 21 of the agenda and is information on the status of petitions handed in at council meetings and the council offices. Item 9, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Do members agree with the nominations made on page 2 of the order paper, which you would have found on your desks? Thank you. One moment, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is just a slight amendment to what's on here where it refers to Councillor Johnson. What we'd actually like to do is to remove Councillor Arnold from People's ONS and replace with Councillor Day, and then nominate Councillor Day as Vice Chair of the People's ONS.
Thank you. Are people happy with those? Has anyone got any concerns or questions? I'd like to remind members that there are still vacancies. We'll accept the changes, but now I'd like to remind you there are still vacancies as appointments on the Campaign to Protect Rural Essex outside body, the Constitution Working Group for a member, and Health and Wellbeing for a member. We can't decide those now. You need to go back to your groups and discuss it, but it's just a reminder that we could do with some people filling those positions. Thank you. Item 10, Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report. Leader, would you please introduce the report that can be found on pages 23 to 54? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Madam Mayor, the report has been tabled. In moving it, I would just thank all those members who took part in the scrutiny process last year and all those members who are taking part in our revised scrutiny arrangements this year. I think it's important that at some point we take stock of how the new changes are working, and if needs be brave enough to make whatever changes we need to make sure that we get the proper effective scrutiny that this council needs. Madam Mayor, I've always thought it's a bit of a misnomer that this is moved by the leader of the council. I think it would be more appropriate if it was moved by a chair of a scrutiny committee. So I will stop there, and I would invite those people who were chairing scrutiny committees last year to make any observations that they would wish.
Thank you. I'll come back to the chairs after I've asked Councillor Jeffries if he has anything to say.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Only really to endorse what Councillor Kent has just said, to thank all the chairs, and it is something that we should keep under review as it's a new system, and I look forward to hearing from the chairs of the relevant committees now.
Thank you. Councillor Spate, do you wish to speak on this?
Yes, briefly, Madam Mayor, thank you. I will reiterate more or less what Councillor Kent and Councillor Jeffries have just said. I'm honoured and privileged to be the chair of the People Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I read with a great deal of interest all the reports from last year. One thing that concerns me that both the previous speakers alluded to is that we must evaluate the way we're currently working. I am quite concerned about the huge workload that is now drilled down to just 3 committees. We do have task and finish groups. We have the opportunity. We've got another 6 months of this council. We'll carry on with what we've got, but I hope when these reports are put together at the end of the current year, we really do go through it very, very carefully and compare last year with this year and see if we have truly improved scrutiny. I'm not 100% convinced we have yet. And I would also just like to, and I was going to do it earlier, but I'll tie it into my 4 minutes. Obviously, there was a late change from the Conservative group, and I was hoping and looking forward to working with Councillor Johnson as my Vice Chair. I'm equally looking forward to working with Councillor Day, but I would just like to pay tribute to the work that I know Councillor Johnson has done for, in particular, children's services over many years. I know his interest won't wane in that, but thank you for what you've done, sir.
Thank you. Would any of the chairs of the former committees like to add to the comments around the report? Councillor Morris-Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to reiterate really what everybody said, it was an absolute honour to chair the Environment scrutiny last year, and like others, I really look forward to seeing the evaluation of the new scrutiny process, because obviously it is one of those things that we will learn and need to understand anything that needs to be tweaked. But just like to say thank you to all the members that were past and present, that some aren't here now, that actually were on the panel last year. And thank you.
Thank you. Would any other members like to speak? Leader, do you wish to have your... Oh, sorry. Councillor Rigby.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just to say thank you to everyone that sat on the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee last year, to all the officers and to the Youth Cabinet who attended, I think, pretty much every meeting. There were quite a few things discussed. There were changes with the school transport system due to sort of having to make some budget savings, and also they had the schools had to deal with all the RAC issues, and they coped very well with temporary measures during that time. Another big topic was the children's obesity issue, and I'm very pleased that that's been led forward now in the current task and finish group. So just thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerrin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last time I spoke in this chamber as a member of the Corporate Committee, I kept everyone in here past midnight. So you'll be pleased to know I have nothing to say other than to say thank you to all the members and officers who took part in the committee, and I wish all the new chairs, vice chairs and members well for this year.
Thank you. Leader, do you wish to have your right of reply? You have 2 minutes.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do members note the recommendation? Thank you. Item 11, questions from members. Member questions can be found on pages 55 to 56 of the agenda. I'd ask those members who have submitted questions to please read out their question when asked to do so. Question 1 from Councillor Allen to Councillor L. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Chamber. Councillor Watson, with Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner MP stating on the 30th of July 2024 this year, she was set to overhaul or tearing up England's planning directorate by relaxing planning rules and regulations, which effectively puts further pressures on local councils to agree planning permission for more housing developments in Greenbelt areas. How much of our borough's Greenbelt will this administration agree to be concreted over? And of course, if they follow their National Party's policy, in terms of percentage of those developments on Greenbelt, how many will consist of social and affordable opportunities for local people? Thank you.
Do you wish to speak? Do you want to say anything more? No?
Yes, please. Councillor Watson, I would like to touch on the impacts of such large building developments, what will push upon our borough. I understand that Thurrock's population is currently around 185,000 people, which could elevate substantially if the housing boom occurs here. I hazard a guess that our population will soar considerably to over 250,000 people by the time both this government and our council approves more housing developments. And although health and well-being isn't directly your portfolio, and I have sort of touched with Mark on it just briefly this evening before full council, as a direct implication of such a large building programme, and I would really ideally like you to answer, because you are the portfolio holder for good growth.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there and give Councillor Watson the chance to reply. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen, for your loads of questions. First of all, in terms of house building, I think we need to get something straight. At the moment, there's a national planning policy that is subject to consultation that is currently taking place, which has finished, actually, it's not taking place. It finished on Tuesday. The policy does propose changes to the Greenbelt policy, which will need to have appropriate weight given to it when there is a planning obligation that needed to actually be considered, and also the planning committee needs to take that into context. Me personally, I have got no say over housing and what they are and how they're brought forward. That is the planning committee's decision to make. Currently, I just want to point out that in Thurrock Council only owns about 9% of the Greenbelt. It doesn't own the rest of the Greenbelt at all. That is already been owned by developers, and that has already been made up into housing development planning applications now. So going forward, me personally, I cannot do that. I cannot say whether they're going to build on Greenbelt or not. That is down to the planning committee to make that decision. We have got a affordable policy that they should be adhering to, and if we can get more, we will do. The new planning framework, if it carries on, it will say that if there is Greenbelt, and what is constituting grey belt, we don't know right now, because that is all being considered right now, then 50% of that has to be affordable. So, affordable, they're talking about around about 50% of grey belt, if it's grey belt. Green belt, we've got a policy at 35.
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thanks.
Councillor Allen, would you like a supplementary question? Can I remind you that it is a question that we need?
Yeah, where you stopped me short, Madam Mayor, it would have gone on to, do you think that it's time that this Labour-run country and administration here in Thurrock are seriously considering Thurrock having its own full working accident and emergency hospital to safeguard its population's health? Now, especially after the previous Tory administration's failure, along with its NHS partners, to implement the promised IMCs.
Sorry, Councillor Allen, can I ask you, what is your question linked to your first question?
Well, the large impact that the building programme is going to have on health and well-being.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, do you wish to respond?
Councillor Allen, thanks again. So every planning application, regardless what size it is, and you can actually look to your right, and there's Councillor Kelly that was chair of the planning committee. It has to come forward with infrastructure of some sort, depending on the amount it is, depending on the amount of housing that is going to be there. So I cannot tell you what infrastructure is going to be put in place, because it will be considered and weighed through the planning obligations of the planning committee. It's not me personally. I can't say there is going to be, I don't know, 100,000 homes that's going to be built in Thurrock, which there probably won't be, and then I'm going to go to the NHS and say, you're going to build me a new hospital. It doesn't work like that. In planning committee, all of this is taken into consideration. So I think it's quite disingenuous asking me, right at this moment in time, am I going to build an hospital because there's going to be lots of houses that's going to be built that we don't know about, or what the impact is, or anything else. That is down to the planning committee to make that decision.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Allen, do you wish a second supplementary question? And remember, it has to be related to the answer you've just received.
Right, it should be a foundation of this council's groundwork, health and well-being, because without it, we've got very little to hold on to. I'd like to ask Councillor Watson, do you support strengthening Thurrock people's healthcare before steaming ahead with a detrimental to health housing programme? That's it, thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm really confused with the questions that I'm currently getting right now. I'm not sure if that should be the portfolio to health or the chair of planning who would know, or even the chair of planning might know.
Can I remind Councillor Watson that she's the cabinet member for good growth? Now, I think
Thank you,
healthcare
but-
comes under good.
Thank you. Can I just say that your original question has sort of got sidetracked slightly?
Madam Mayor,
thank you.
it's the impact that this overall housing developments will have on the health and well-being. Now, the
Thank
health
you.
and well-being of this borough should be paramount.
Yes, I'm sure it is. And we'll get Councillor Watson to respond
Yes.
briefly if she wishes. Have you got anything more to say, Councillor Watson?
Yes, I do think about the health and well-being, and yes, it will be taken into consideration, and yes, it will be with the planning committee, we'll all take that into consideration, and yes, we will not be bringing in thousands of people without the necessary conversations with the necessary stakeholders that need to deliver their infrastructure as well.
Thank you. Question 2 from Councillor Gary Byrne to Councillor Worrell. Oh, sorry. That's my fault, folks. I've turned 2 pages. So, question.
That's all right, Madam Mayor. Shall I get up and ask my question? Yeah?
Can you just wait for a moment? Sorry. There may be an error in the paperwork. Sorry about that, folks. I think I've sorted it now. This is actually from Councillor Jones to Councillor L. Watson. Councillor Jones, can I ask you to read your question, please? It's on page 55 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The way things were going, I was quite happy to sit down and behave myself, but, you know...
Glad you were going to behave yourself.
and be patient, thank you. Councillor Watson, the Labour government has made statements regards house building in this country. The government has quoted, no ifs, no buts. Local councils will be forced to build houses, and also large portions of Greenbelt will be put forward for house building. What is this Labour Council's response to these statements, and do you agree with government measures which could force this council to build houses in areas of Thurrock which the Planning Committee would not normally recommend if we don't comply? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. As I've mentioned previously with Councillor Allen, unfortunately, fortunately, the national planning guidelines is just finished. It finished, so I can't tell you what the outcome of that consultation will be yet, and that will form policy going forward on how that will address the housing and the infrastructure and what is green belt, what is grey belt, and how the council deals with all of that. Most big housing planning applications has to go to planning committee. That's what happens up and down the country, and it's down to planning committee to actually make that decision. If planning committee goes against an application, which they're more than entitled to do, that developer is also entitled to go to the planning inspectorate to go through an appeal. And if they go through the appeal and the planning inspectorate falls on the side of the developer, then unfortunately the only other person to overturn that planning appeal is a Secretary of State. So it doesn't come back to us. We only go to planning committee, and only planning committee make that decision once.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Jones, do you wish to have a supplementary question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Watson. I had two questions, but I'm just going to combine a question into one. Thank you. We all know that homes are needed. We all know that Thurrock has been behind with its housing supply, and we all know that Thurrock has not had a local plan for many years. What concerns me, like at a recent planning meeting, the spokesman for a developer stated to the committee, you can't expect Thurrock to protect every blade of grass, was his words, you know, and basically I think he upset the committee the way he spoke to them. Now, remember, Thurrock has 3 international ports. It's got a large industrial base, and by its nature, it creates poor air quality. So my idea, we need as much green space as we've got as to kind of compensate the bad air quality that we get from the industrial areas. So I'm going to combine my question with the infrastructure as it is in Thurrock. I'd like to know that if the government has, this is my question, and put it to government, have they got any intentions of commissioning a study of Thurrock's infrastructure first to assess its inability to cope as a borough before it forces a large rate of house building in our borough? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, do you wish to respond? Or would you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Not what I know of is the government's going to commission anything right now. They've just been in for the last 3 months, so I haven't heard of anything being commissioned. The only thing I can say going forward is that every single planning application that will come through that's above 10 houses has to go to the planning committee. The planning committee makes that decision. And unfortunately, if the developer feels they're not happy with the planning, then they have got every right to go to the planning directorate and have the appeal heard there. And then it goes from there, which way that falls. So I can't tell you about whether they're going to commission anything right this moment in time. Nothing has been said so far.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Jones, I'm presuming because you combined your 2 questions, you don't want your second supplementary? Thank you. Sorry, now question 3, from Councillor Gary Byrne to Councillor Worrell. Councillor Byrne, can you read out your question, please, as set out on page 55 of the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Worrell. Residents of Homestead showed great interest in the corporate plan. Even one couple invited me to their home, and these are the questions they've asked me, not what I'm asking, basically. With reference...
So we've got a question in the agenda that you need to read to us.
I'm just saying why. Yeah, I've got the question, yeah.
Thank you.
With reference on page 24 of the corporate brochure, which states, in support of place strategy, develop delivery plans to protect our environment, maintain our public realm and ensure Thurrock is a great place to live. The question I asked, when will Thurrock officially be a great place to live?
Thank you. Councillor Worrell, please respond to the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for your first question. Thurrock is more than the council and this town hall. It's the people that live here, our families and our communities that make this a great borough. Thurrock is where my parents grew up, where I grew up, and where I've chosen to bring my 2 sons up. For me, and I am sure thousands of other people across this borough, Thurrock is already a great place to live and work. Our goal is to support our communities in making this an even greater place to live. This was reinforced when we unanimously agreed and adopted the corporate plan, which outlines how we will continue to better Thurrock as a place. The plan commits to enhancing our environment, ensuring clean streets, well-maintained public places and better roads, key elements that contribute to a higher quality of life. In the coming weeks, we will introduce specific milestones and metrics to track our progress and going forward, meet the measures within the corporate plan. And I hope that you will take your opportunity as scrutiny chair of place to play your part in improving the services that will make Thurrock an even greater place to live than it already is.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Gary Byrne, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, please. This resident is 85, by the way. So. He's lived here probably longer than Lynn. The same resident said the corporate plan brochure, it's very repetitive. He asked, would you consider producing a condensed version, say like in the form of a bullet points on A4 sheet, highlighting the key points, so in a form of tick list? Would you consider making it more readable for people that actually, they don't want to see it, they want tick, tick, they've done that, they haven't done that, they've done that. Is that, would you do that, please?
Thank
you. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. And I can confirm to you tonight that there's already an abridged version of the corporate plan, and it will be sitting in your inbox tomorrow morning for you to be able to print it out or share it with your residents so that they can see it. And if they'd like a printed copy of the full brochure, then I'm happy for them to have that too.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne, do you wish for a second supplementary question?
Well, kind of answer that in the last one. The resident also said he finds it really hard to read on screen, and he preferred a hard copy. He also mentioned his friends had no access to the internet who are also interested but can't read it. When I requested 6 copies of the brochure for those who asked for hard copies, I was told the corporate plan is not ready to share with residents until it is and when agreed with members over the summer. Once it's released, we advise you to direct residents to the Thurrock Council website where are information relating to the corporate plan. So, with that, I couldn't answer him. What did we ask? What did we vote for in July, if not the corporate plan? Why am I being told the plan is not ready to share with residents when it's on the website?
Thank you. Councillor Worrell, do you
I
wish
think I probably answered this last time in the second question, in that the idea of the corporate plan was it was never a resident-focused document. It was a document for us to track our improvement out of intervention and for us to be able to measure our own improvement year on year, and it will be updated year on year. And for us to say that it probably is prudent that we didn't print a copy for every resident in this council, because I don't know if it's passed anybody by, but we kindly haven't got the money to be able to send that to every house. But I'm more than happy to leave you half a dozen in your office for you to take round to your residents so they can read it at leisure, Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Question 4, from Councillor Spate to Councillor Victoria Holloway. Councillor John Kent will answer. Councillor Spate, please read out your question as set out on page 55 of the agenda. Thank you.
Given that Councillor Holloway is not here, this is a fairly local and complex question, and the situation has already changed. It would be unfair, I think, for Councillor Kent to have to answer it and my supplementaries. Therefore, I'll resubmit the question for the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Question 5 from Councillor Jeffreys to Councillor Victoria Holloway.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to withdraw the question.
Thank you. Question 6 from Councillor Spate to Councillor Victoria Holloway. Councillor Spate, please read out your question as set out on page 56 of the agenda.
Deep breath, John, you're not getting out of this one. Yeah. As it is a matter of widespread public interest, stretching beyond reports to the ONS committees, can the portfolio holder give this chamber and the residents of Thurrock a summary report on the introduction of food waste caddy bins across the borough up to and including the 31st of August, including an appraisal of costs? The report should include the number of caddies delivered, the number that have been collected on a weekly basis, clearly this will be an average, and the number of complaints reported online or by telephone about a failure to collect over the lifetime of the project to the 31st of August.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you wish to can you respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thurrock successfully introduced the food waste collection service across the borough starting from the 8th of July 2024, introducing on a phased basis, which allowed us to bring forward the start date from the previously planned date of September. The initiative is part of our ongoing effort to reduce general waste disposal costs whilst promoting environmental sustainability by recycling food waste. Total food caddies delivered were 45,269. The cost of supply and delivery was £481,480.80. The cost of information leaflets was £6,379. The total food waste collected during July and August was 326.28 tonnes. The average collected per day at the moment stands at 10 tonnes. The average collection per team is 2.16 tonnes. The total disposal savings are savings of £40,132. That's money saved by food waste not going into general waste at £123 a tonne disposal cost. And the revenue from food waste is £6,525. That's at £20 a tonne, so additional savings of £46,638. As far as complaints are concerned, during July and August, there were a total of 312 complaints of non-collection. That's 94 in July and 218 in August. And I apologise if I've missed any piece of information that Councillor Spate was requesting.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Spate, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Not so much a question as a thank you. I would just ask that the one thing that I did ask for was the numbers collected on a weekly basis as opposed to tons, the tonnage. But it seems reasonably successful, and I'm glad to hear it, but I'm sure everybody will be watching it as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Question 7 from Councillor G. Byrne to Councillor Worrell. Councillor Gary Byrne, please read out your question as set out on page 56 of the agenda.
Madam Mayor. Councillor Worrell. How is the portfolio holder ensuring that services within the council are properly resourced in core hours when considering staff's ability to work very flexible hours and a potential staff shortage in some areas across the council?
Thank you. Councillor Worrell, can you respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. The Council has implemented policies including Working Smarter policy and Flexible Working policy designed to support both managers and staff in adopting flexible working arrangements. These policies allow for flexibility but always in line with specific needs of each service area. Having a flexible working policy is essential for attracting and retaining talent, particularly for staff with children or caring responsibilities, as it enables them to manage those responsibilities without compromising service delivery. However, we recognise that flexible working is not suitable for every role or service. For employees working flexibly, we expect clear communications using email footers that indicate that their working hours and to clarify that responses outside of others' core hours are not expected. Managers are responsible for setting the necessary standards within their teams, ensuring that all services remain properly resourced during core hours while adhering to our broader corporate policies.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Byrne, do you wish for a supplementary question? Wish to pose a supplementary question?
Well, this one's on can member services cope? Are you happy with the out-of-office reply we receive when going through members? It basically tells us not to take on residents' casework, tells them to do it themselves, it's quicker. Surely none of the 49 worth their salt would even consider doing this.
Thank you. Councillor Worrell, do you wish to respond? Or can you respond, please?
Yes, of course, Madam Mayor. So in response to your part around the members' inquiries and how that works, this has not worked. And we all know that, members' inquiries has not worked for many, many years. And different people manage their members' inquiries in very different ways. And I even know of councillors in this chamber that actually run a spreadsheet to be able to track their own members' inquiries to make sure that the work's done. So, what are we doing about this? Last week at Corporate Overview and Scrutiny, a working group was set up to look at how inquiries are dealt with, whether for members or for residents. And what I would suggest maybe, Councillor Byrne, is that you maybe listen to that meeting to see what was discussed. It was a really, really good, heavy discussion about how we're going to be dealing with members' inquiries, and maybe meet with Councillor Ben Maney to see how you can feed into that, because I absolutely do agree that, you know, more should be done, and that when a resident should be able to contact this council, ask for something to be done and not have to resort to going to their councillor. So I think that we do need to drill down into this. We do need to do that piece of work. And the corporate overview and scrutiny are certainly taking that piece of work very, very seriously. So I hope that in the future months we'll begin to see like maybe that is, you know, something that is resolved during this municipal year.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Byrne, do you wish to pose a second supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The one that really got me recently, when a member of TBC staff sends out an email, if it's not bad enough, they send it in red, which sends out so many wrong signals to me. And the message actually read, I work to suit my lifestyle, which means I work outside normal working hours. If I send an email... Well, what's the point? I'm getting an email...
But we need a question, not a statement.
He had half hour. He said, I do not expect you to reply inside normal hours, and even tells me he's got no planned leave in red. You really don't need to book holiday if you can work to your own lifestyle. So anyway, my question is, I'm not going to name and shame this guy, but surely this institutionalised mentality has to change. It is another good reason to get staff back in the office when people actually, I don't know, they can send me an email at 10 o'clock at night and walk their dog all day. They've got to be so, and especially in red, I can't believe the CEO allows people to send his House members in red.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne.
Councillor Worrell, belief.
Could you respond, please?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Perhaps the red font brought back memories of your old school homework. I certainly had a fair amount of red written on my school homework. But I think that my previous answer did cover this, in that we have a flexible working policy, and that an officer who is working here tonight may well be actioning that what I've just asked them to do, but they wouldn't be expecting the member of staff that's going to be actioning that to be dropping those corporate plans into your office tonight. So I think it is fair to accept that people do work different hours, and I'm also one for making sure that it's not right for us to be able to, and I've always had this as a really strong feeling, we should never throw officers under a bus, we should never name shame, we should never embarrass an officer, and I've seen a fair amount of that in the last year. And I think it really needs to stop now, whether it's in this chamber, whether it's on social media. You know, they don't have the right to retaliate back to us. And I think that it needs to stop, you know, all of this, an officer's done this and an officer's done that. I think it's probably not for an open forum to be picking that up. You've got a problem with an officer's signature or what colour it is. And I did a little bit of looking at colours and fonts and that sort of stuff. And somebody who is colourblind actually would prefer to see something in red or a light blue. You know, it depends, like, different disabilities means people write in different colours. And I'm sure that officer wasn't doing anything to make that stand out, you know. So I just think that for different people, they do different stuff. And maybe we are just looking back to our school days, and maybe it wasn't been seen to be rude.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Question 8 from Councillor Johnson to Councillor Lee Watson. Councillor Johnson, please read out your question as set out on page 56 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Watson, following on from the PASS review into the Council's planning service, do you as a portfolio holder believe the local authority is better able to respond to big infrastructure projects or planning applications?
Councillor Watson, please respond.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Okay then. Thank you for that, Councillor. It's reassuring to believe we're in a better place. I think that's what your yes referred to. However, with this in mind, can you inform the Chamber of your opinion as portfolio holder on National Grid's Norwich to Tilbury project, which will of course need to come to us for planning, as to how this will impact Thurrock in general, and in particular mine and Councillor Day's residents in the Orsett ward. Bearing in mind your own PM's recent comment that people with concerns regarding this particular project should be listened to.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, please respond.
Thank you, Councillor. The National Grid is still under consultation, as you well know. There is a lot of consultation happening, especially around the port. It is due to go underground from Orsett Heath. It goes underground all the way through until it reaches the substation. Pylon-wise, we have about 16, which is a lot less than Norwich and a lot less than coming through to Basildon. So until the consultation is absolutely completed, the officers are working on the DCO, which is currently happening. They have got people in to work on it, that's got experience on it, which was a lot more than when we done the A13. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Johnson, do you wish to pose a second supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Thanks again, Councillor. I must admit I'm more worried about Thurrock than I am Norwich and Basildon, but other local authorities and Essex MPs have placed on record their views regarding this project, with many of them highlighting the negative environmental impact these so-called mega pylons, which 16 I think you said we're having, could have, including the destruction of the Greenbelt. So please inform the Chamber if Thurrock Council have officially objected to the project or indeed made any such representation under the current administration, and if so, what that is or was, i.e., are you against it or not?
Thank you. Councillor Watson, can you respond?
So, Councillor Johnson, the Council has responded to the consultation. They responded the end of last week. It was quite very in-depth consult about it. And they have took into consideration as well about the environmental impact that is happening right now, or what could happen to it. They're working, there is a couple of concerns that they have, that they are now working with National Grid about that, just like the Tilbury Port are. And until that's all come through and finalised, then I will get an update, which I'm quite happy to share with you if you want. In terms of, I just want to put it out there as well, Councillor Johnson, that there is a report going about the review that you've initially asked me for as your opening question before you diverted into the Norwich and Tilbury DCO. That's going to Cabinet. You are quite welcome. Any councillor, any member can attend Cabinet. And if you wish to ask questions on Cabinet about any of the report that's coming forward, it would be really good if you could give them beforehand, so at least the officers and I can be prepared, but if not, you can ask a question. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Question 9 from Councillor Kelly to Councillor L. Watson. Councillor Kelly, please read out your question and set out on page 56 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the portfolio holder reaffirm the timetable for the formation of the local plan?
Thank you. Councillor Watson, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. The Council are committed to do a local plan, as you well know. A report on the timetable will be coming to October's Cabinet. Once again, the offer is open to you as well as it is open to Councillor Johnson. If you wish to come and listen and read the report and ask any questions, I'm happy to do that at the time. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for your answer there. Answer to question A about being in a position to take on bigger infrastructure projects and planning applications. You answered yes, fantastic news. Does your portfolio or does your administration have any plans to try and encourage bigger investment into the borough prior to the local plan? Because it's quite clearly some years off. One of the reasons I think it's important for us as a council is bigger infrastructure projects do bring in bigger business rates, and that will take off pressure from council tax rises, service cuts. So really the question is, do you have a plan to try and encourage investment prior to the local plan? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Watson, can you respond, please?
Thank you. As you well probably know, that Thurrock is really good strategically anyway. We're across the riverfront. We've also got the Freeport, which is like growing. DP World, which you work for, is actually going for an LDO2 that is going to be going into the planning committee soon, very soon, in order to it to grow, to get bigger. At the moment, there has been a couple of conversations that will go into planning. One is at the Arena, Essex, that also will go into planning. That's all the conversations that I've currently had at this moment in time.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Kelly, do you wish to pose a second supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for your answer there. Yeah, so we have noticed that applications have dried up slightly on planning, but it's not entirely unusual because we do go for phases, but we don't want to sit in a situation where applications dry up completely. I just wanted to check whether this is still on the radar. Last year, I believe it was Councillor Kent put in a motion to support Grays Athletic having a home in Grays. Since then, they of course have a home in Ship Lane, but the motion itself was very specific about bringing Grays back to Grays. I think that's quite important as a Grays councillor because ultimately these clubs thrive if they're in their local area. So is it still on the radar as basis of the motion that we supported sort of 12 to 18 months ago? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not quite certain that that linked to the original question, but Councillor Watson, would you like to respond, please?
I would. Councillor Kelly, you were chair. You agreed for it to go on the PDI site of Grays Athletic. You agreed to have your home there. They went avidly to try and get that home there. Even though it's East Thurrock, that's a different matter. The reality is no. They've got a home now. Their home is sitting next to the PDI centre that you voted for as a casting chair vote. So on that, no, I'm not going to be looking at Grays Athletic come back into Grays. They have got a dedicated pitch for themselves to now be in the league and to do what they want to do.
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I have a point of clarification on what you said there about it not being related to the local plan?
Yes.
Sorry, the motion was via the local plan. Can we find a suitable site for Grays Athletic? Hence why it was related to the original question. It was just a point of clarification. You said it had nothing to do with the local plan.
No, with your original question, not the local plan. So thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Question 10 is from Councillor Day to Councillor Muldowney. Councillor Day, would you stand, please, and read out your question as set out on page 56 of the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. What is the council doing to make sure the gardens in the civic offices that is used for weddings fit for purpose?
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Muldowney, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Day. In terms of maintenance schedules, the front garden at the civic offices is on a 3-weekly schedule and is attended by the grounds maintenance team on that basis. The back garden area, which is a little more specialist, is attended monthly by the arboriculturalist team. In summer months, they attend more frequently, particularly when the weather's hot. I'm not sure if that answers your question and would be keen to hear more what you mean when you say that the gardens are not fit for purpose.
Thank you, Councillor Muldowney. Councillor Day, would you like a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay. And thank you for your answer. Yes, the garden does look okay now, but it's not great. But throughout the whole of the summer, which is the most common time to get married, it was not very presentable and looked a bit of a mess. Now is the perfect time to think ahead to next year. So can the portfolio holder agree that there should be bright and colourful flowers planted in the garden for next year?
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Muldowney, can you respond, please?
Thank you, Councillor Day, for your question. So obviously when I was notified of your question, I took the time to view the gardens myself and contact corporate complaints to see if there'd been any complaints about the garden. The head of customer services and manager of the registrars confirmed that there'd been no recent complaints, so that covers the summer as well. So I'm a little at a loss to understand what evidence underpins your idea that the gardens aren't fit for purpose. Additionally, I must report that the gardens were actually only put on a regular maintenance schedule around about the time that this administration took over. So that there may have been, well, that's what the operations director says. So there may have been complaints prior to that, but obviously we're now on a regular maintenance schedule, and that will continue moving forwards.
Thank you. Councillor Day, do you wish for a second supplementary question?
Yes, thank you very much. As you can see, there was some sort of disagreement over Maldani's answer, Councillor Maldani's answer. Many people who get married here do not have their photographs taken in the garden because of the unpresentable as it looks. Would the portfolio holder agree to consult with couples seeking marriages here to see what they would like in the gardens so that they feel comfortable having their photographs taken here?
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Maldani, can you respond, please?
Thank you, Councillor Day, for your second supplementary. Again, I suppose you're expressing your opinion, which you are entitled to, about the gardens. However, I must reassert that there haven't actually been any complaints from the public to evidence that the public feel that it's not fit for purpose. Also, you know, if this building hadn't have been built, there'd be lovely gardens. This building was actually built over the memorial gardens. The question of whether this building or aspects of the building are fit for purpose, I think you probably need to ask the people sitting on that side of the chamber who designed and implemented the build against the expressed wishes of residents and the majority of councillors at the time through a standing motion on the council. Thank you.
Councillor Maldani, can you address the final question, please?
What was the final question?
Would you repeat the last part of your supplementary, please, your second supplementary? It's just, could couples who come to be married here be consulted to see what they would like to see?
Could couples that come to be married here, could they be consulted to see what they might like in the gardens? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for repeating your question. I'm sorry that I missed that the first time around. I mean, I will certainly take that away and look at it. I mean, at the least, we do want people to be happy about the space that they're getting married in and that they're having their photos taken. So if you don't mind, I'll take that away and I'll come back to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maldani. Item 12, reports from members representing the Council on outside bodies. Before I invite members who represent the Council on outside bodies to speak, I would like to direct members to the update from ePut on the Lampard inquiry regarding mental health services in Essex. This has been tabled from Councillor Spate in agreement with the leader. Does any member who represents the Council on outside bodies wish to present a report? Councillor Spate.
Very briefly, and I would, if I may, with your indulgence, Madam Mayor, just touch briefly on Lampard. I think it's important that all members here be aware of Lampard and keep watching it. Over the next 2 years, that's how long it's going to take, there will be some pretty horrific stories coming out. Some of those stories will relate to Thurrock. They'll be Thurrock people. I think it's important that we, as members of this council, are fully aware of what's going on within that inquiry. So, and I will keep updating you as long as I'm in this chamber. The other point I was going to raise is in relation to my role at East Thurrock Community Association. Very briefly, we've not made a huge amount of progress since I last raised it in this chamber with full council. It was discussed at Cabinet. I've had conversations with the leader, who is very supportive and very helpful and has come up with some very constructive suggestions. Members of ETCA have just asked me to say they are still disappointed and they're worried about their future, but I'm sure I'll be bringing some positive news when I next address this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Item 13, minutes of committees. These are listed in the agenda on the contents page. Item 14, motions update report. These are listed on the agenda on pages 57 and 58. Motion 1, Councillor Spate, please read out and speak on your motion as printed on page 659 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the abortive attempt to get a positive response from the Conservative government, will members now support my request that the current Labour administration repeats our unanimous call for an independent public inquiry into the financial collapse of this council? An inquiry that allocates responsibility for what happened and, should it be required, takes appropriate action against those proven to be at fault. And also that if the responsible Labour local government minister rejects it, the council cabinet consider funding an independent inquiry. That is the motion, colleagues. I would suggest that each and every one of us in this chamber, and our absent colleagues not with us tonight, are regularly asked, when is someone going to be held accountable for the council's financial collapse? Our answer is usually we don't know. There are indications of blame in the best value report produced by the commissioners, but it fails to be specific. It indicates blame, in some instances bordering on criminality, but it does not go on to explore the issue. Police say they are aware of the possibility for fraud or criminality, but they need to be invited in to launch a probe. We remain in limbo, and it's a continuing and weeping sore on the integrity of this council. Residents don't just want answers, they deserve answers. To their credit, the previous Conservative administration, which was very much a culpable part of what went wrong, did support the previous call for an independent public inquiry. It was one of the few signs of contrition, but perhaps forgive me for being cynical, perhaps they also did know that the Conservative local government minister wasn't going to play ball. The cover-up from government always seemed likely to come. Some of the biggest and the most vocal critics, when we last discussed this, were Labour members. They are now in the majority, and I see no reason why their view will have changed. And now the matter would go before a Labour minister if referred to Westminster again. Maybe that will prompt a change. I was heartened ahead of this meeting to see Councillor Kent says he supports the motion. Sadly, I know that commissioners who actually run the council these days would rather there not be an inquiry. The Commissioner CEO has said he sees little value in it and he doesn't want to fund an independent one if the government says no again. I respect his opinion and I can see why he wants to look forward rather than backward, but I fundamentally disagree with it. He doesn't have to shoulder the burden. It's the residents of Thurrock who are being crucified by the debt and the catastrophic financial failure of the council. It impacts daily on their lives, and with draconian and punitive further cuts to come, things will get worse. The very least they deserve to know is who was to blame and that they will be held to account. Instead, they see the former senior finance officer swanning himself on holidays in the sun and having the gall to post pictures on social media. He's been seen enjoying the high life at top West End shows, and he has yet to offer an explanation or a word of apology to the people he was supposed to serve. He's had his cake and now he's eating it. I understand the former CEO has been touted for new jobs in local government. That almost beggars belief. And don't forget, they both benefit from very handsome pension provision accrued at Thurrock Council. In effect, they have walked away from a calamity they caused scot-free and without any obvious accountability. When I go for a pint down my local pub and get harangued about by residents because their bins aren't being collected, because the grass isn't being cut, and because their home-to-school transport has been axed, I have to give answers and be held accountable. I don't have a problem with that. In many instances, I defend the council. It goes with the territory. It's the real world. But is it too much to ask that those who actually caused the problem be named, held accountable, and if evidence indicates sufficient willful wrongdoing, prosecuted? That cannot happen without a public inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Can I ask who's seconding this motion? Thank you. Do you wish to speak now or withhold your right till later?
I reserve the right till later, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, I believe you want to speak.
So, Madam Mayor, we will be supporting this motion this evening. I think I was the first member in this chamber to call for a full independent inquiry. I backed that inquiry when we had a Conservative council and a Conservative government, and have not changed my mind one iota now that we have a Labour council and a Labour government. As Councillor Spate has said, residents of Thurrock will be dealing for decades to come with the impact of the financial collapse of this council. They'll be paying with poorer services and higher council taxes. We are labouring under a debt of £1 billion. Last year, we paid more in debt interest payments than the rest of the budget combined. That is untenable, and somebody needs to be held account for it. Madam Mayor, there are real lessons to learn, not only for Thurrock, but for those other currently, 7 local authorities who have declared the equivalent of bankruptcy, a Section 114 notice. And there are lessons to learn from each of them. The impact of austerity on local government, the impact of the Conservative government's push for councils to adopt the commercialisation agenda, the withdrawal, the scrapping of oversight bodies such as the Audit Commission, the role of central government itself. I mean, let's not forget that this authority borrowed close on £1 billion from close on 200 local authorities, and the government department seemed to be oblivious to it. Government itself, the machinery of government, has questions to answer. And then you have the role of our external auditors and the external auditors of each of those local authorities that has declared a Section 114 notice. There are lessons to learn for the future, and we need to see those lessons learned. I was interested that Councillor Spate gave an update on the Lampard public inquiry. There are currently 15 public inquiries, I believe, going on, and more public inquiries in the pipeline. I find it hard to imagine that the advice to a new minister from civil servants will be any different from the advice given to previous ministers. So I think that we do need to prepare our fallback position. I don't think that the council is in any position to fund the kind of independent inquiry that we would like to see, but there are alternatives. I think that the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee could be asked to carry out an inquiry into what's happened here and into those other authorities. I'm surprised that the Select Committee for Local Government hasn't instigated some sort of investigation, some sort of inquiry into what's happened. And I would urge that when we contact government to make the push again for an inquiry, that we put in there that could be a backstop. And the last thing that I would say is that I would suggest that this council's Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee itself could have a look and carry out its own inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the motion, Councillor. It's a motion that I find easy to support if you would just consider removing that last line of the Cabinet to consider funding the inquiry. The cost of such a public inquiry that you're looking for could run into hundreds of thousands of pounds, and to place further financial burden on the council taxpayers of Thurrock for something that, whatever the outcome, whatever they find, they will not see any financial income generated back to the council, and that would be difficult for me to agree to. I have no doubt that as opposition we'll be asking the administration to do things they may not be comfortable with. However, this for me is a request too far. So if you were to consider removing that line, I would gladly put my support your way into this motion. However, should it remain, I'm afraid the only way to avoid headlines of Conservative councillor objects to public hearing means I would have to do something that I believe I've not done in my 14 years in the chamber, and that's abstain from a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Which I think enough's been said, really, but I'd just like to add the public, they don't want just a public inquiry, they actually want to see a public hanging. We must see the guilty charged or the innocent freed from all suspicion. Until then, we're not moving on, we're not going anywhere.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Byrne, can I ask you to withdraw the comment about a public hanging, please?
It's just a term, isn't it, you put on. The public want more than a public inquiry, I'll just say that. I'll withdraw.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw the hanging, although I agree with the public.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, do you now wish to take your chance to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we really do need to pass this motion at Council tonight as to restore some form of credibility for Thurrock Council. Thurrock residents feel let down by Thurrock Council and trust is at an all-time low, but not just with councillors, which is the norm. It's with senior officers as well. When you speak to residents, it's the main topic of conversation. Many residents expressed concerns about how the council was being run way before the spiralling debt that Thurrock Council was incurring was reported in the press. So, Madam Mayor, do not dismiss these people, our residents. They're knowledgeable people, and at the moment they're very angry. The residents took time to organise petitions because of the lack of communication from Council with regard to the mounting debt. And then they presented these petitions to Council with an excellent speech being given by Karbal Sandhu, pointing out in detail the way in which our Council was running up the debt. That was last year, and he presented his petition to the Cabinet. That was after Councillor Byrne had presented a previous petition to full Council. And bear in mind, this was after Thurrock Council decided on spending taxpayers' money trying to shut down all forms of communication about the mounting debt. A mounting debt that was just over £1 billion. How can any concern run up a debt of £1.25 billion and think it can keep it quiet? Could you imagine this happening to Amazon, Microsoft, Ford's, or any other large business? Heads would roll, investigations would take place, how this came about, and measures put in place to make sure that it could never happen again. This is what the residents' petition and this motion is asking for. And the residents of Thurrock have a right to know how the events played out, leading up to Thurrock Council finding itself making headlines in the national press as to find itself in this position. A position of going broke, requesting help from government as just to supply statutory services. What a terrible situation to find yourself in. It's no wonder residents are angry with council, because it's them that are going to be made to help pay down the debt, rising council tax, reduce services, paying for services, all the time because Thurrock Council was on a failed investment policy with no regard for the outcome. The residents' petition that Council supported was presented to the Secretary of State, but was eventually refused on the grounds that the BVI report was carrying out much the same role. The body carrying out the BVI report may have had good intentions as to find out where Thurrock Council had failed, but many residents and councillors feel this is not the full case. The report, although detailed, as most reports normally are, tends to repeat itself quite a bit, but it has put forward some good measures that Council can implement in the future. For example, the report states £1.25 billion debt that Thurrock Council finds itself in was caused mostly by financial mismanagement and lack of scrutiny by councillors. Now, this may be part of the case, but councillors can only be scrutinised with what's been put in front of them by officers. Some councillors may have known more about what was going on, but the majority of councillors, and there's some good councillors in this chamber, I know there are, they should not be made responsible for the situation if information was being kept from them. That's why, Madam Mayor, all councillors should support this motion as to implement a full public and independent inquiry, hopefully with the Labour Secretary of State's support. But other than that, Thurrock Council must fund it itself. Thank you very much.
Councillor. You've had just over your time, but thank you. Are there any other members wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Spate, do you wish to have your right of reply? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just reflect on what colleagues have said. As usual, Councillor Byrne leads with his heart. And I'm sure the sentiments that he expressed while maybe not to the liking of the scribes taking notes from the council. This probably does reflect the feeling of a lot of people across the borough. Councillor Jones's passion absolutely shone through, as it did right from the start when this petition was first launched. I know he spent many hours standing on the streets in all weathers collecting petitions, and at that time he wasn't on the council. He was just so grievously annoyed by what had gone on. Councillor Kent, as ever, has come up with some polished statements. I'm very grateful for his support, and I'm sure that he will take this forward. And so, and then to Councillor Johnson, who continues to have my admiration, and he makes some very salient and very good points. And he's asked me to amend the last bit of my motion. I don't feel I can do that, because I'll point out that what it actually says is the Council Cabinet consider funding an independent inquiry. We're not asking the Council to do it. We're saying that, as we all know, matters from this chamber at full Council still go to Cabinet. Cabinet is the ultimate power broker, and above them, of course, our friends, the Commissioners. And I'm confident that if we send this motion unanimously, and I hope Councillor Johnson will feel it within his remit to acknowledge the word consider, that the Cabinet will do a good job. I was slightly disparaging about the opinion of Dr. Smith. I know that he will be absolutely honest, upward, stalwart, and a real contributor to the discussion when it comes to Cabinet. He'll come forward with some good ideas. So I just hope that, all things considered, members will support this motion, and we will show our residents that we really do mean business.
Thank you. We'll take this to the vote now. All members in favour of the motion, please show. Thank you. All those against the motion, please show. All those members abstaining, please show. Thank you. The motion is passed. Motion 2, Councillor Jeffreys, please read out and speak on your motion as printed on page 59 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members present are appalled at the Labour government's decision to means test winter fuel allowance, as a result of which thousands of pensioners will lose this vital payment, including many thousands here in Thurrock. Accordingly, members are 1. Express their opposition to this heartless decision by supporting this motion. 2. Request that the Leader of the Council also writes to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, requesting that she abandons Labour's plan to snatch the winter fuel allowance from many Thurrock pensioners. And 3. Direct that officers consider and propose how this Council can encourage and support local pensioners in establishing whether they're eligible for the pension credits. Madam Mayor, usually I would begin such a speech by saying that it's a pleasure to bring a motion to this chamber. However, on this occasion, it's with regret, anger and sadness that I do so. Members will be fully aware that in one of its first decisive acts, this new Labour government has decided to strip the winter fuel allowance from millions of pensioners, including over 10,000 right here in Thurrock. This is nothing short of a disgrace, and it means that pensioners with an income of just under £13,000 or above will no longer receive this vital support. Let's be under no doubt, this is not a decision that's been made. This is not a decision that has to be made. It's a political choice. Labour have removed the winter fuel allowance from millions of the most vulnerable people in society so that they can reward trade unions who bankrolled its general election campaign. The Labour Chancellor and Keir Starmer have tried to con the British public by claiming urgent action is needed to restore the public finances, even going so far as to suggest that the pound would crash if they didn't strip pensioners of their winter fuel allowance. As we all know, this is complete nonsense and nobody's buying it. Labour have fabricated a so-called black hole as justification for this decision. But if there is a black hole, why has the government announced uncosted public sector pay rises to the tune of £10 billion without any deal on productivity in return? Striking train drivers already earning £60,000 a year, will receive a hefty drink thanks to the Chancellor, while pensioners are left to freeze this winter. Let's look at the facts. When the Conservatives won the general election in 2010, there was a real black hole to be filled thanks to Labour's reckless management of the economy. Unemployment in 2010 was 8% compared to 4.4% now. The national debt was at 10.3% of GDP, where it is now 4.4% and is expected to fall in the next few years to 1.2%. And current inflation is at 1.4%, lower than it was in 2010. Despite the mess left by the Labour in 2010, it was unthinkable for a Conservative government to strip the winter fuel allowance from any of our pensioners. Prior to this general election, Labour shadow ministers had full access to the Treasury officials and information from the Office of Budget Responsibility. They would have known before taking office what the overall state of the economy was, but they decided to hide this from the British public to snatch the winter fuel allowance from pensioners, the very people who have worked hard all their lives and asked for very little back. Make no mistake, Madam Mayor, this heartless decision, backed by our new Member of Parliament, Jen Craft, will force pensioners right here in Thurrock to choose between heating and eating this winter. And Labour knows this because in 2017, their own analysis found that means testing the winter fuel allowance would lead to 4,000 pensioners dying. Madam Mayor, there it is, the cost of Labour's decision in its own numbers. Are they really saying that 4,000 dead pensioners is a price worth paying so that Labour can pay off the unions and spend money on its own pet projects? Winter fuel allowance was a Labour initiative. Despite crashing the economy, I give Gordon Brown credit for introducing this support. Who would have ever believed that a Labour government would now preside over the sickening decision to remove it from millions of our pensioners, including some of the last World War II veterans? We cannot change the decision here today, Madam Mayor, but we must speak up on behalf of our pensioners. All UK political parties, apart from Labour, are united in their opposition to this move. We must add our voice to this call for a U-turn. At the same time, my motion calls for officers of this council and the Labour administration to explore ways to encourage Thurrock pensioners to apply for pension credits or establish whether they're eligible. It is believed that as many as 800,000 pensioners would be eligible for this support, and they're not claiming it. We can use the means at our disposal as a council to get this message out. Madam Mayor, I commend my motion to the Chamber and look forward to the support of members.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Can I ask who is seconding this motion? Thank you. Councillor Coxall. Do you wish to speak now or withhold your right?
I'll reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I've received an amendment from Councillor John Kent, and this has been tabled. Councillor Kent, please read out and speak on your motion.
Madam Mayor, members present are deeply concerned by the financial failures of the last Conservative government, which has resulted in a £22 billion black hole in our nation's finances. Accordingly, members acknowledge that the decision to award the winter fuel payment to pensioners receiving pension credit was a difficult decision that nobody wanted to make. Welcome the government's commitment to protect the most vulnerable in our society by delivering the £150 warm home discount for low-income households from October, extending the Household Support Fund with £421 million to ensure that local authorities can support vulnerable people and families, ensuring 1.3 million households in England and Wales will continue to receive up to £300 in winter fuel payments, and to request the Chief Executive to report to Cabinet in respect of the steps the Council can take to encourage and support local pensioners establishing their eligibility and access to pension credit, and the most effective use of our share of the additional £421 million Household Support Fund, and in doing so, seek the views of the relevant Overview and Scrutiny Committee on any proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Can I now ask who is seconding the amendment? Councillor Muldowney, thank you. Councillor Kent, you can speak to the motion now.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I'm the same as everybody else. I don't welcome the changes to winter fuel payments, and I am bitterly disappointed that it's happened. But disappointed as I and many others may be, we must remember that local councillors are not responsible for decisions such as these, and we cannot change them. And it is important that we understand the background and national context behind these changes, especially for Councillor Jeffreys and his colleagues, because they seem to be suffering from some kind of collective memory loss. So let us be clear. The nation's reserve, that is the money set aside for genuine emergencies, was spent 3 times over in the first quarter of this financial year by the previous government. The Treasury's independent financial audit revealed that the new government had been left with a £22 billion black hole in the country's finances, a black hole that was covered up from the British people. And it's a fact that successive Tory governments have left us all considerably worse off than we were 14 years ago, and the tax take is at a 70-year high. Madam Mayor, they have forgotten their undying support for the disastrous Liz Truss, whose gift to us all was a trashed economy, higher costs, rampant inflation, bigger mortgage repayments, costing people more every single day. And Madam Mayor, locally, the Conservatives have saddled us with a historic bankruptcy of the council, a toxic Tory debt of £1 billion, council tax up by 18% to the highest level in our history, and many frontline services slashed and charges introduced for others. All of this adds up to a toxic Tory legacy for every man, woman and child of Thurrock. And now we're expected to believe as they cry crocodile tears for pensioners. Madam Mayor, they weren't so squeamish last year when they introduced a charge of £260 for pendant alarms for many of those same pensioners. They had no problem scrapping the council's £600,000 hardship fund that provided a lifeline for many. And I don't recall a Conservative motion to council when their government removed free TV licences from our old folk. Madam Mayor, we can all see hypocrisy when it's in front of us. But even though, thanks to their disastrous mismanagement of the council finances, there is little money, we will do all we can to help local people with the cost of living. And I am proud that today we have announced we will be introducing the Thurrock Pensioner Support Fund. Backed by at least £100,000 from the government's household support grant, this is real money to help those Thurrock pensioners who will need it most this winter. We're also launching our Thurrock Cares campaign, which will, amongst other things, drive up the take-up of pension credit by encouraging those eligible to apply. Incidentally, Madam Mayor, something that Conservative councillors failed to do for the 8 years that they were running this council. So just so there can be no misunderstanding at all, the toxic Tory legacy that we have inherited means that everyone in Thurrock will be burdened with higher council tax and poorer services for many years to come. And yes, it limits what we can do to help. But while they'll make their cheap political points, we will do what we can to help those in need in our community, and we will get on with the job of clearing up the Tory mess.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Maldoni, as seconder, would you like to speak now, or do you wish to reserve your right until later in the debate?
I'd like to speak now, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I stand before you today to oppose the original motion and support the amended motion. The original motion condemns the Labour government's decision to means test the winter fuel allowance, but it ignores a crucial fact. Resources are limited and we must target support to those who need it most. Instead of focusing on universal handouts, the amended motion ensures that pensioners on the lowest incomes are prioritised. This is not about taking away support, but about fairness. It's about making sure the most vulnerable, those who struggle the most to heat their homes, are protected. The reality is that the country faces a significant financial shortfall, one that was exacerbated by the financial mismanagement of the previous Conservative government. The £22 billion black hole in the national finances means difficult choices have to be made. In Thurrock, we know very well the cost of Tory financial mismanagement. The toxic Tory legacy means that current council debt still stands at £1 billion, despite a fire sale of investments and council assets, a Tory council tax rise of 18% over the last 2 years, and cuts to services which have affected every resident in this borough. Locally, Labour are doing more than just talking. I'm proud to announce the launch of the Thurrock Cares campaign, which will make sure that our pensioners get the help they need this winter. With at least 100,000 set aside in our new pensioner winter support fund, we are targeting support for those who no longer qualify for the winter fuel payments, but still face the tough reality of rising energy costs. This fund will be available for pensioners on lower incomes, even those who don't receive pension credit but still need help. The Thurrock Cares campaign goes beyond just financial aid. We are working hand in hand with local voluntary groups and community hubs to make sure support gets to those who need it. We'll have roadshows going across the borough, taking advice and support directly into our communities. We'll be providing an easy-to-use online tool and printed guides available in libraries and community centres so everyone can access the information they need. Our focus is not just on pensioners, but on all vulnerable residents. We'll be helping them to sign up for the benefits they're entitled to, but particularly pension credit, which could provide up to £3,900 per year for those who qualify but aren't claiming it. These are all things that the local Conservative administration could have done. Instead, last year they cut the £616,000 hardship fund, money that could have provided critical relief for those struggling to make ends meet. They also decided to charge our older residents £260 a year for Careline, a vital service which many rely on to live independently. And they took free home-to-school transport away from some of the borough's most vulnerable children. What we are proposing is real, targeted action that will help people this winter. The original motion's blanket opposition to means testing misses the point entirely. We don't need universal benefits. We need smarter solutions, and that's exactly what the amended motion and our Thurrock Cares campaign offers. We're stepping up for Thurrock's most vulnerable. Let's do what's right for those who need it most and support the amended motion. Let the Tories get on with childish political point scoring off the backs of the borough's most vulnerable residents. Labour are going to get on with clearing up the Tory mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maldani. Does any other member wish to comment on the amendment or the substantive motion? We are aware of the ones who've already put their hand up, so that's fine. Each member will have 4 minutes to speak. Thank you. I'll start with Councillor Day.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, like Councillor Jeffries, I stand here appalled, angry at Labour's decision to strip winter fuel payments from millions and millions of pensioners. And just when we enter the winter, fuel prices will jump up yet again, and an average of 10%. Pensioners will be slapped in the face so that the Labour government can spend this money elsewhere. Even if we accept there is a black hole in the public finances, which there isn't, why are the pensioners the first ones to get it, to be hit? And if tough cuts are needed, why shouldn't we cut the foreign aid, as Boris Johnson did in 2021? Haven't they heard that charity begins at home? And no one is buying Labour's excuses for snatching the winter fuel allowance. Not even their own members in Liverpool at your conference. They plan to do this, Labour, before the general election. But they hid it. They hid it from the British public, meaning the decision marks a new low for British politics. And listen to this. Labour MPs are calling for 2-child benefit cap to be lifted, and Labour ministers have shelved the outgoing Conservative government's plans to save £12 billion from elsewhere in the bloated welfare budget. Savings can be made without putting pensioners first in the firing line. Instead, Labour wants to allow people of working age and already on benefits to go and have children, as many as they like, football teams. And who's going to pick up the tab? The working class taxpayers, the middle class taxpayers. Councillor Jeffries has already said it this evening. This is a political choice and not a decision that has to be made. I will be supporting this motion, and I call on all decent, fair-minded members of this chamber to vote for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Spate, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On a personal level, this reminds me of Jim Bowen. Having just passed 66, here's what I could have won. But nice as it would have been, I didn't need it. And for example, I know of someone who has not divorced a partner, so every winter, the partner's share of the heating allowance, some £250, arrives at her bank account where she now lives in the south of Spain. So something needed to be done. What is in place was not fit for purpose. But I don't think Sakir and co got it right. It was the proverbial sledgehammer to crack a walnut. It's caused real mental harm and real concern to many vulnerable people. It simply does not bear scrutiny as it stands. Councillor Kent is right. We cannot, it's just spoken, we cannot change this as local councillors. But surely, as local councillors, we are charged with representing the view of the majority of borough residents. I cannot believe that the majority of people in Thurrock support the legislation as it stands. Therefore, I will support Councillor Jeffries' motion, simply because the most important of it says express opposition to this decision. Whether it is heartless is a subjective matter, because it certainly hasn't caused any personal heartache to me, but I am equally certain it will have to others. However, I do welcome today's announcement by the Thurrock Labour Administration to establish a pensioner winter support fund, though with Thurrock Council's track record of effective engagement with residents, I am not holding my breath about whether they manage to get that message across. I will be supporting Councillor Jeffries' motion.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this whole issue of the stripping of the elderly of their winter payments is obviously of Labour's making, our new government. What I can't get my head around is that the DWP, which is a governmental body, that pensioners' payments are digitally transferred, I understand, into the individual's bank accounts. So they're quite aware of, in pounds and pence, what every pensioner is taking for pension payments. And I can't understand how they have to fill in an extensive eligibility form, which I understand is around about 200 pages long. Is that correct? Can someone... Right, to see if they qualify. This is a form of persecution, I believe, that shouldn't take place, and it should automatically be set for those pensioners who qualify, because they damn well know how much they receive in payment. So why can't it automatically be done without an extensive eligibility form?
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Byrne, please.
Yes, I think the leader and Jan Croft are using the same script on there, because it's almost word for word. And I'm going to try and behave on this one, but for me, the winter fuel allowance is not giving us money. All I'm doing is getting return on my investment for the last 50 years. So I fully support Councillor Jeffries' motion. I'm an old age pensioner myself. I tick the old box. I even get one of these things that I'm never going to use, a bus pass. But having said that, I've been hammered as a pensioner by the Conservatives, and I've been hammered by Labour. Both parties seem happily mug pensioners. Labour are now saying, Gary, we're going to give money to those who didn't prepare for their old age, but because you worked hard to secure your future and have a comfortable old age, we're going to take even more money away from you. This is our little thank you for you and Mrs B for paying the highest level of income tax for almost 5 decades and paying 8 years over the 39 years national insurance period to qualify for the full state pension. If it's not bad enough supporting Andrew Jeffrey's motion, I'm standing up here, I'm still paying around £500 tax while I'm standing here. And I'm also actually paying for my own clothes. At least the Tories honoured our triple lock. What are Labour giving us? £460. They take away 300 of our benefit. We are left with £1 a week maybe that doesn't even cover the cost of filling a hot water bottle. I paid for it, I deserve it, more than, as this guy said, foreign aid. We give, but then for pensioners you just take. So I fully support Andrew Jeffrey's motion, and I don't like saying that.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Paulson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I stand here today in full support of the amended motion. The decision to means test winter fuel payments is not a decision taken lightly, but one that is absolutely necessary as we face difficult economic realities. Let's be honest here for a second. Despite the massive debt we've inherited from the last administration, Thurrock Labour stands with Thurrock residents in ensuring that we create a fairer, more balanced society. We understand the pressures facing families across our borough. While the previous administration may have been content to kick the can down the road, we are stepping up to face those challenges head-on. Let's take a minute to consider the impact of decisions made in this chamber by the former administration on Thurrock's pensioners. This is not the administration that cut the entire hardship fund, worth £616,000, created to support families during the cost of living crisis. We are also not the administration that introduced a charge for pensioners to use Careline in this borough. It was not Labour, nor our independent councillors. It was the Conservative group that made all of these decisions. We as the Labour group have put residents first, above all else. We are not an administration of inaction like the last, and we do not hide behind words. We can be judged by our actions. The party's decisions are focused on supporting those who need help the most, and means testing the winter fuel payment ensures that resources are allocated fairly. It ensures that people who truly need support get it. In line with this, I am proud that the Council are launching Thurrock Cares. It is a step in the right direction. The initiative will further demonstrate our commitment to the well-being of the community. Thurrock Cares provides direct support to families struggling with energy bills, housing issues, and other financial pressures. The initiative is proof that Thurrock Labour is a group of action, not just promises. We have listened to the community. We are acting decisively. We want to show Thurrock residents that Thurrock Labour is a group of the community. We are not distant, disconnected bureaucrats. We are people of the community, and we are here to serve. Every decision we make, every policy we implement, is done with the people of Thurrock in mind. To my fellow councillors here this evening, I urge you to support the amended motion to back this council's proactive approach aiding residents. Let us remember that it is not enough to stand here and criticise, we must also act. We will all be judged by our actions, not just our words. I am confident that when the people of Thurrock look at this video, they will see that Thurrock Labour, and those of you who choose to support this amendment, did not shy away from tough decisions. We have stood with them and delivered change. Whilst the opposition are content with political point scoring off the back of Thurrock's pensioners, this administration will continue its efforts to clear up the Conservative mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anderson. Councillor Anderson, please.
Madam Mayor, it wasn't too long ago the current Deputy Prime Minister said, the Tories want to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners in England, but not Scotland. Why do they treat pensioners so badly in England? So my question for the Labour Party is, why now do you treat pensioners so badly across the UK? That is a rhetorical question, though. I know the answer. We've heard the excuses peddled in national media by National Labour Party politicians. They tell us that upon entering government, they are in receipt of a uniquely terrible fiscal inheritance. But that is a nonsense. As we've already heard, referenced by Councillor Jeffreys, inflation, unemployment, the deficit are all lower now than they were in 2010 when the coalition entered government. But let's just entertain the Labour Party's nonsense for a moment. Let's just say they are the inheritors of a historically awful fiscal environment. Even in that circumstance, what I would like the pensioners of Thurrock, thousands of them, set to lose this allowance, to know is that this was still a political decision that didn't have to be taken. Politics is an exercise in prioritisation. Scrapping the winter fuel allowance in the way the Labour Party suggests will save the taxpayer about 1.4 billion this fiscal year. But just a few weeks prior to the winter fuel allowance announcement, Ed Miliband pledged billions upon billions on overseas climate aid. The Labour Party are more interested in funding foreign green projects than they are keeping their own citizens warm. That's despite telling us back in July, if we could just bring ourselves to vote for them, we'd all be better off. Instead, their members of Parliament, including Thurrock's own Jen Craft, have spent their first few weeks on the job voting to reduce the winter fuel allowance for millions of people across this country and pretending as much to themselves as to anybody else that this is the tough but right thing to do. Madam Mayor, former Labour Party Prime Minister Tony Blair said many years ago, a Rottweiler on speed can be more amiable than a pensioner wronged. I have a feeling that one or two in the Labour group are going to learn that lesson the hard way come May the 1st next year. They have the numbers, so they'll win any vote tonight, but I will be voting against their amended motion this evening, and I would encourage every other member here tonight to do the same.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you really want to deflect from this decision, you've got to change your rhetoric. Nobody wanted to make it. Well, don't make it. Make a different decision. Find it somewhere else. You know it's out there. Find it somewhere else. But this decision is a real kick in the teeth to Thurrock's pensioners, many of whom rely solely on this payment to see them through the winter. So it was very disappointing to see our own newly elected MP for Thurrock vote in favour of this appalling decision. To see it forced on the vulnerable without any fair warning is just pure hypocrisy from the new Labour government, and it's beyond belief. They've gone even further and rubbed the pensioners' noses in it by agreeing to inflation-busting pay increases to groups such as the train drivers, whilst at the same time receiving vast amounts of freebies and gifts. Mind you, I suppose if the pensioners could afford the fare, they could always ride the trains to keep warm. Does that sound familiar? You also have insulted the pensioners' intelligence and produced a press release stating new money's been found to help. That's not new money. You know it isn't. So actually, this is not hypocrisy, because if the Labour group are one thing, it's predictable. These are simple, blatant untruths to the electorate that brought them to power, and the decision needs to be reversed immediately. Should it be deemed necessary to introduce a means test, then much more lead time must be given to the affected persons, and any limit for that means-tested income should be set at a much higher rate, not one that costs less than Lady Starmer's free dresses. So obviously, Madam Mayor, I will be supporting Councillor Jeffrey's motion, and I beg the Labour members here to have the courage of your conviction and join your comrades from Liverpool who have voted this down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I must express my deep disappointment that those on the opposite benches would have the audacity to bring a motion like this before this council. The hypocrisy we have heard from them tonight is truly astounding. They are the very same councillors that push through financial decisions that will have actively worsened the lives of our residents and will continue to do so for more than a generation. Let's not forget, they forced our most vulnerable pensioners to pay £5 a month for digital assistance, further squeezing those who are already on the highest budgets to pay that £260. The form that was sent out to all of our residents for a pendant alarm requires them to declare all their benefits, if they receive a pension from their previous employment or even their late partner. Do they have any savings, no matter how small? It is 4 pages long. Every question has to be answered, no skipping. It's very intrusive and all for £5 a week. I have a copy of those forms with me tonight, should anybody doubt what I'm saying. Your Cabinet, Councillor Jeffreys, rubber stamped this very local means-tested charge for all of our residents. So your political posturing is wasted on me tonight. I helped several residents to complete the forms over the summer, and I know of many, many others that simply sent the pendant alarm back because they cannot afford and do not have the understanding to be able to do those forms. Madam Mayor, the party opposite completely eradicated the £116,000 hardship fund, a lifeline meant to support our most deprived families. Through financial incompetence, they dismantled a critical safety net designed to help those who need it most. Now they are standing there pretending to care about our pensioners and families struggling with fuel property. Quite frankly, they have no right, none whatsoever, to bring this motion to Council. At both the national and local levels, the Conservative parties have systematically eroded the quality of life for millions of families across this country. Here in Thurrock, the damage is done. By the previous administration's policies, it will be felt in every corner of our communities. You really are shameful people over there to be bringing this. They completely abandoned the very people they now claim to represent, and now want to stand on some kind of moral high ground with this motion. It's time for them to stop their political posturing games and start addressing the real issues. And we should also mention that you're only there probably because you wasn't up for election last year. The rest of your lot have already gone. For this reason, Madam Mayor, I will be supporting the amended motion here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cockshall has seconded. Do you wish to speak now? To support this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are we supporting Councillor Jeffreys this evening? I would like to say I'm a bit delighted by the administration's decision to make an announcement today, 2 months after government started to look at that. It's great that we've got that in place and you're going to take up pension credit. But when there was an amendment laid a day and a half, 2 days ago, and there's a press release, the timing of it looks a little bit posturing as well, and you may humour me there. I just really don't get what the Labour Party tried to do nationally here. You have an opportunity cost, and I find it really hard with Councillor Kent's amendment citing a black hole which has 9.2 billion in inflation-busting pay rises. At the same time, I understand tonight 5-year-olds are about to be charged VAT on their nursery placements because of an error in law, which for VAT has now been rushed through to be charged on. These are opportunity costs here. Explicitly, when this is a £1.4 billion saving, but we're okay with 9.2 on pay rises, we're okay with 40 billion on nationalised Great British Energy, we're okay with nationalisation of Thames Water. These are opportunity political costs, which the Labour Party has made at the cost of pensioners. There is 20,584 pensioners who are at risk of losing pension credit this winter as a result of the Labour Party's policy. I just find it really it is a bit hypocritical. And I appreciate there is this idea that means testing and making sure the right people get the support. I do believe that. But there is that issue which comes with there are people that will fall through the cracks, inevitably. A reason why it was never means tested is partly because of that reason, because the cost will be pawned to other services to pick up. We've got the system in place, and I appreciate that there is that decision. But again, as Councillor Johnson said, this is a snap decision which has come at a shock for many pensioners, not something they were warned about. Many, I would say, over 65s received letters from the Prime Minister, or the now Prime Minister, coming up through the election. He outright said in his letters, "We will stand up for pensioners." Well, that's a really good standing up for them right now. Inevitably, I'm going to talk from personal expense, my own grandparents. They are now £700 a month worse off they will be this winter. And that is what they've worked out, and I've sat with them to work it out with them. That is where they are by the time they factor in their energy costs and the loss of their winter fuel allowance. I still can't fathom a black hole which is 50%, maybe more, from own political choices to be made within the first month. It looks like there was a spending spree to capitalise on what you've achieved and you've won a big majority. But it just seems very rushed. There's no consultation, there's no decision on how this would actually work. And for that reason, I can't see, especially as we go here, financial failures resulting in black holes. We acknowledge, but it's a difficult decision no one had to make. You didn't have to make that decision. That is the underlying point of what we've seen. For that, I really actually admire one of my old members of Parliament. I used to live in York, City of York, Rachel Maskell. She's standing up, she's taken a decision, along with members of the Labour Party members, rank and file, in Liverpool. I admire what they've done, and I think they're doing the right thing. They realise the mistake the National Labour Party have made, and ministers and the Prime Minister has made, and she's speaking out for that, and I really do admire her guts for doing that. But then again, the Labour Party has got the majority, it can make that decision. But I really do feel for those people who voted for change in July, they may be feeling a bit of buyer's remorse.
Thank you. Councillor Haldon, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to give Councillor Polston and Councillor Worrell the opportunity to correct the record. You said you were angry when the previous administration put in place means testing for pendant alarms, assisted technology, and you said it was disgusting. You're aware that was the policy from your last administration. When we took control in 2016, we inherited a scheme, a payment scheme for pendant alarms and assisted technology from the Labour administration. I then abolished your policy in about 2018, and then unfortunately we had to revert to the original policy. I would prefer it if taking the fees from pendant alarms away that I put in place had stayed in perpetuity. The reality is we've only reverted back to the system that you put in place and the system that you gave us. Yes, you have a letter. You have a letter proving that we reverted back to your policy. That was the policy that you had for the 6 years you were in administration. So I'm disappointed we've gone back to Labour policy, but we have gone back to your policy.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst many pensioners may not need it, setting the rate at pension credit eligibility is far too low. It is possible that the potential health problems that arise from some pensioners not being able to warm their houses sufficiently could outweigh any savings. The black hole of £22 billion does include the decision of giving public sector workers a £9 billion pay rise. This was a choice. The winter fuel decision has also been a choice. The decision is made more unpalatable by the gifts given to some senior Labour politicians and their partners. Lady Starmer's outfits, admittedly very stylish, I'm sure each cost far more than an individual winter payment. I therefore support Councillor Jeffrey's motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kent, Councillor John Kent, as mover of the amendment, do you wish to have the right of reply? You have 4 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I've actually enjoyed aspects of the debate. This is not where any of us would want to be, and I think that's been very clearly articulated. If I start with Councillor Day, I have to say that his talk of parents with families the size of football teams wandering around the streets of Orsett shows that he's still in the land of make-believe. Although at least it didn't take him long to make his mind up this time. Councillor Spate, who at least declared his interest, makes a really important point about the means test. So the original motion says that we're appalled at the decision to means test the winter fuel allowance. I think there is a case for means testing the winter fuel allowance. The problem with the means test, however, is that if you're a pound the wrong side of it, it's a cliff edge and you lose everything. But he makes an important point. Is it right that Tony Blair, that was mentioned elsewhere, gets the winter fuel allowance? Is it right that Lord Heseltine gets it? Is it right that Alan Sugar or Elton John get it? Surely we all kind of accept that in these straitened times, it's not right that people on that kind of income will actually get the winter fuel allowance. And Councillor Spate talks about the need for effective engagement in this. Well, I look forward to his help in making sure that we get the message out there. Councillor Johnson quite rightly points out that this is a policy that will hit local people. That's why we're launching the Thurrock Pensioner Support Fund. That's why we're launching Thurrock Cares, so that we can try to wrap our arms around as many people as we possibly can. For Councillor Cockshaw, yes, the announcement was 2 months ago. We have had 2 months to plan, 2 months to get this together, 2 months to make sure that the figures add up, because this is a bankrupt council. There isn't the money that we would like to be able to spend on this. We have to make sure that we're not worsening the council finances. What else? I think the only other thing I would say is we've heard lots about honouring pay demands. I would just remind everybody in this chamber that the pay rises that have been honoured were the pay rises recommended by the independent pay review bodies that were established by the Conservative government. A Labour government honouring the pledges of the Conservative government, but somehow that's wrong as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Jeffreys, do you wish to sum up? You have 4 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I find this amendment slightly galling, and I quote, it says, acknowledges the difficult decisions taken by the government. I mean, really, mealy-mouthed words that will be of no comfort to Thurrock's pensioners freezing in their homes this winter. It makes no mention of the way in which the new MP, Jen Craft, has let down the very people who voted for her. The Leader of the Council mentions means testing and falling off a cliff edge. That's exactly what is going to happen. There are pensioners here in Thurrock that will fall over that cliff edge and not receive any help whatsoever. Members opposite talk about hypocrisy. What I find hypocrisy is this list of freebies that Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner had. Accommodation for his son, £20,000. Clothing, £16,000. Glasses, £2,500. Football tickets, £14,000. Tickets to Taylor Swift, £400. Tickets to Arsenal, £33,000. The list goes on. Meanwhile, pensioners are freezing in their homes. And today, the Leader and the portfolio holder issues a press release saying, look, we've just found £100,000, the back of the sofa. We're going to help those most in need. How cynical. You know full well that this money was given by the last Conservative government every 6 months to help with the crisis of the cost of living crisis. The money that this council has spent every single time helping those struggling with the cost of living crisis. It by no means replaces the £300 that pensioners will be losing. As for our MP, I wrote to her recently asking her to reconsider her decision to vote in favour of cutting the winter fuel allowance and to lobby the government. I got a reply. Well, I say a reply. Basically, it's an excuse of a reply. It is basically a cut and paste from a Labour Party press release or briefing. She said she was too busy to reply earlier because she was busy dealing with constituents' problems. Well, I gave her a constituents' problems, thousands of constituents' problems, thousands of pensioners in Thurrock that won't get the winter fuel allowance, but she was too busy dealing with other problems. It's rumoured that the government is going to drop the 25% discount for council tax, single occupants. This will disproportionately affect pensioners. You have to ask yourself, this government, this Labour administration, do they really care? And what have they got against pensioners? But then again, I'm not surprised. A recent post that I put on Facebook asking the Chancellor to reverse her decision, a member of this cabinet in this room put a laughing emoji to that. That's how much they care about pensioners. Across the country, both Labour and Conservatives are condemning this decision by the government to scrap the winter fuel allowance. Their own conference, as someone mentioned earlier, has said it. So I urge all of you opposite. We might not be able to change the decision, but we can send a message to your government, the government that the people out there voted for, to scrap this winter fuel allowance. Support my motion, or, as somebody's fond of saying to us, shame on you all. Shame on every single one of you. Shame on you that people out there, your grandparents, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, even people in this room, who are going to suffer as a direct result of your government's first actions. Support my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffreys. We are now going to proceed to vote on the amendment, just so that you're clear what we're voting on. Thank you. Can we just keep in mind what we're actually doing here? We'll now proceed to vote on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. Thank you. All those against the amendment, please show. Yep. Thank you. And all those who wish to abstain, please show. Thank you. As the amendment is carried, I will now ask you to vote on this as the substantive motion. So all those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. The amended substantive motion has been carried. Thank you, everyone. Given the time and the fact that we still have two motions left, I would like, three, sorry. I would like to move a motion without notice to suspend council proceedings rule 11.1 to allow the meeting to continue beyond the 3-hour time limit. Councillor Kent?
Madam Mayor, as we can only move that motion without notice once, can I ask that we put a time on it, or just say that we extend standing on the end of business?
Yes. I think, yeah. I think we'll say to the end of business. So, have I got everyone's agreement on that? Thank you. Motion 3, Councillor Green, please read out and speak on your motion as printed on page 59 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This council has recently reaffirmed its intolerance of violence against women and girls. We want Thurrock to be as safe as place as possible for all our residents, and resolves to run a Thurrock Get Me Home Safely campaign. This campaign will encourage businesses to commit to ensuring staff who finish their shifts later in the evening get home safely. Madam Mayor, I am bringing this motion to get agreement to start a campaign to strongly encouraging Thurrock businesses to sign up to a Thurrock Council Get Me Home Safely campaign. This campaign will encourage businesses to actively ensure that their staff get home safely when they finish work late. But why should businesses commit? Well, the National Policing Statement has declared that violence against women and girls is now a pandemic. 84% of women in the UK say they feel unsafe waiting for a bus after dark, and 54% often feel unsafe using public transport. By helping address these concerns and making sure that people they employ get home safely, businesses will be demonstrating a real commitment to their staff, which could bring in further business to their door. Madam Mayor, the statistics around this are frightening, and I have circulated some information here this evening. Madam Mayor, I don't want to go on at length, but all of us here know of incidents where late night workers have been intimidated, door staff getting attacked after refusing entry, or bar staff abused for refusing to serve someone at the bar. Madam Mayor, we can start to make a difference here this evening and take some positive action against the pandemic of violence against women and girls that plagues our country and help keep workers in Thurrock safe. I ask all members to support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Can I ask who is going to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Heath. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak after the debate?
I'll speak now, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second this important motion. Councillor Green has highlighted some alarming statistics to the Chamber, and sadly there is so much more. In 2022, the Office of National Statistics survey of perceptions of personal safety and experience of harassment found people felt less safe walking alone in all settings after dark than during the day, with women feeling less safe than men in all settings after dark. Disabled people felt less safe in all settings than non-disabled people, and more women, 27%, than men, 16%, reported that they had experienced at least one form of harassment in the previous 12 months. When asked about how they felt using public transport, the data showed that women aged 16 to 34 years felt the most unsafe of any age and sex group using public transport alone after dark. While this survey is about perception, sadly the evidence about violence against women shows women's perceived fear isn't unfounded. In 2023, another study surveyed 600 women across the UK, including one-to-one interviews with women who had been subject to harassment. 94% have felt threatened when using public transport, 62% felt unsafe waiting at a bus stop, and 54% felt unsafe travelling alone. 52% felt unsafe walking to the bus stop or station, and 28% have been attacked on public transport. The principal consultant on this study said that she was shocked that these incidents are happening so often and shocked at the severity of them. Even as a woman, she said she had never heard of these experiences. No one is talking about the problem. The significant fear of sexual abuse revealed by the survey is across the entire transport network, she said. The same study found there was also a stigma around reporting an incident. One woman said that she was, after being assaulted on public transport in London, a policeman asked her if she was sure she wanted to go ahead with the report, seeing as it might impact on her good job prospects. Just this year, a report found violence against women and girls on British Railways had risen by more than 50% over 2 years. Sadly, I'm sure all of us will recognise some of these feelings and experiences. I know I do. It isn't just about evidence, it's about feeling safe in the borough we live and work in, and we should all want that, which is why I hope everyone will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heath. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Victoria Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Don't wear headphones so you can hear if someone is trying to creep up on you. Don't wear heels so you can run if you need to. Don't tie your hair back as that will make you easier to grab. Don't drink too much, as you need to be aware. Don't wear clothes too revealing. Don't walk down streets or alleys that are too dark. Don't take the shortcut if it's too dark, but do make sure you get home as quickly as possible. Carry your keys between your fingers. Cross the road if you think you're being followed. Get home in a taxi rather than walk, but only a valid taxi company that you trust. Don't get a bus, but you can get that bus at certain times. Don't get the train, but you can get the train during these hours only. Every woman in the room has heard this. We have to live by certain rules to try and protect ourselves. This is what we need to think about when we leave our homes to try and protect ourselves. But a lot of the time, it doesn't work, does it? I do support this motion, Madam Mayor, because these measures have to be put in place to protect women in Thurrock, but I'm also disappointed that these measures are necessary at all.
Councillor Spate, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And of course, I will be supporting this motion. It's good work, Aaron. However, I think we need to talk about some home truths if we're going to talk about asking businesses to be responsible for the safety of women, children, adults, whatever, across this borough. This council, as people probably know, operates a CCTV system that operates across the borough. There are 1,000 cameras. It's based down in Tilbury. If you haven't been, I would suggest that you go down. I think there should be around, to run it effectively and properly, there need to be around about 30 operators, because it's supposed to go 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are currently 11 operators. Most of the time there should be at least 2 people in the building. There aren't, because the council has cut back on the staffing levels. Members of staff down there have raised this issue, the union has raised this issue, and the council, I believe, is considering adding 1 more person to the team. So if we're going to ask businesses to look after their staff, to be conscious of the fact that when people leave the building there is still a responsibility to look after them, then this council shares that same corporate responsibility to the women, the children and the men across the borough. And effectively, we are abdicating that responsibility by not running an effective, state-of-the-art CCTV system. We have refused to invest in technology. The technology that's down there doesn't link with the technology operated by the police. The Waves system that should allow the officers on the cameras to contact local police on duty is very ineffective and only works in part. And then to cap all that, it's come to the fore this week that the council is now considering cutting the staff and the security within this building. A member of the committee that I am chair of was accosted in the shades of this building just outside only a couple of weeks ago. We didn't have any security staff. We were in the dark. There should have been somebody down there to look after her. The word hypocrisy has been bandied about this room a number of times this evening. I fully support this motion. I'm sure every single councillor in this chamber supports this motion. But those people who are responsible for the security, for the CCTV, for the people in this building, whether they're staff, whether they're public or whatever, you need to have a real think. If you support this motion, you should not be allowing cuts to be made to the security budget of this council. If you're going to say one thing, it's got to apply across the board. We are the corporate parents for young children across this borough. We need to know that they're safe wherever they are. And there are 1,000 CCTV camera points in this borough. But it's quite pointless if you haven't got anybody on the end of them.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. Councillor Gary Byrne.
Yeah, so I joined Councillor Spate on that visit to the CT, and one person looking at 1,000 cameras. It's just criminal, isn't it? And why the top table allow that? God knows why. But I fully support this motion, but there are many reasons why there is an increase in violence against women. I think we need to ask Thurrock's police chief, why has he chosen to ignore many of the reasons that are behind this? If we're going to take this seriously, you need to go to the police and say, why are you letting these women down? Because there are reasons why they're ignoring it. I don't know if that's costs or whatever, but they are turning a blind eye to it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me if I sound a bit wobbly on this one, but this one comes quite close to me. I'll be supporting this measure. If you don't mind me doing so, I'll explain to you why. About a month, 2 months ago, my daughter was taking a taxi from Basildon back to Thurrock, back to our house. The driver drove her off the Thurrock Road into an estate. He then told her he was going to take her to his house. When my daughter, not surprisingly, protested, he locked the doors. She had enough sense to talk reasonably to him, to the point that eventually he unlocked the doors and let her out. But he still parked up the road, so she had to try and phone home while this individual was watching her. When I picked her up, she was in a completely hysterical state that I never want to see her in again. So we rang Uber. He was an Uber driver. Pretty well immediately they took him off their details. But as far as we know, no further action. We rang Essex Police. They sent a couple of people to talk to my daughter. As far as we know, no further action. I agree that a lot more people could be doing a lot more, and I think our experience of the police response has not been great. But if this tells me anything, this tells me that we really do need to be doing something, and something concrete, because these are our wives, our daughters, our girlfriends, not just statistics. These are real people that we know and love. And I mean, yes, okay, the majority of Uber drivers, the majority of taxi drivers, the majority of people you come across in the street aren't like that individual. But it only takes one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor D. Arnold, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Holloway, you stole my speech. I remember being taught all of those things and the contradictions to those things of don't wear stiletto heels because you can't run fast, but wear stiletto heels to defend yourself from somebody attacking you from behind so that you can scrape your heel down their shin. Reverse park your car so that you're safe pulling out. Don't reverse park your car because the perpetrator can hide behind the back of the car and then you're stuck when you open your door and you can't run. Oh, sorry. I've got to stop using my hands. I've got no tissue. I was a teenager when I started those self-defence classes and all of those conversations that the police used to come and have with us about how to protect yourself. And I'm coming towards being a pensioner now, and I'm still scared on the street, and I don't think it's changed very much. So I will support anything that will make those streets safer.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully support the motion. You know, safety for everyone should, you know, you should be confident that you can walk around the borough without any carer being accosted or assaulted and so on. But I can tell you there was an incident that was observed from the CCTV camera in the concierge Tilbury. Now, it was on the train crossing at Grays. It was observed it was a possible assault. There was a man who was kind of rearing up at a woman. An argument took place. There was some pushing and shoving observed. The police were called straight away on the radio, which they've got available in the concierge, but there was no one to attend. No one at all to attend the attempted assault. But the operator followed the gentleman and he followed him back to a property and he gave the details of the property to the police. The police attended a week later and it turned out that it was a domestic between a couple. He wanted the keys to get back in. She didn't want to give him the keys and a row broke out. But, you know, a week later, that the police actually attended to find out that it was a domestic. It could have been the real thing, but we didn't have a police officer available for that incident. which I find shocking. We talk about people's safety when we haven't really got the backup of Essex Police to follow up on you know, the concierge calling them, saying that there's a possible assault taking place. So what the hell is going on with Essex Police, because they're not backing us up on these reports? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson. People can only speak once. Sorry, that wasn't to you.
Obviously, I'll be backing this motion. There's not one woman in here that has ever felt uncomfortable or not felt uncomfortable or standing at a bus stop and feeling somebody standing there behind you. It's happened to every single one of us. There needs to be some responsibility carried out by some of the employers. My daughters work late at nights, and at the point that I actually go and I pick her up, because it doesn't matter what time, I will go and get her. You're right about other resources going with the police, but the police again are short on resources. Just look at the Conservative Party. Nearly done that, Deb, on this. Look at the Conservative Party for cutting the police in all those years ago, but hopefully that will start coming back. The thing is, there was a serious sexual assault that happened not long ago on our ward, mine and Councillor Green's. And they did attend very, very quickly. The perpetrator has been arrested. But the young girl will now spend many, 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 many years mentally scarred, scared, and quite frankly, probably damaged and traumatised to be with near any other men or anything for what she's had to encounter. It doesn't take long for any employer to pay a couple of quid out for a cab or to start encouraging car sharing, because that's exactly what they do, believe it or not, in Nando's in Lakeside. So I will certainly be supporting this. And thank you so much for bringing such an important motion to this chamber for us to agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, I believe you have a...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know if it's a point of order or a point of clarification. Councillor Rann, I apologise if I'm picking on your words. A domestic or the real thing? A domestic is the real thing.
Thank you. Councillor Green, do you wish to have your right to reply? You have 2 minutes.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for all members that have stood up and supported this motion, an important motion that I'm glad we can hopefully get through in a moment. But I just want to address what Councillor Spates says. What you raised, fully right, and I fully support what you said. As a member of the Place and Corporate Overview Committee, I will be emailing our fantastic scrutiny officers, and I will be asking for a report to be brought to that committee so we as members can fully scrutinise what you have said and fully bring back what we feel has gone wrong, and so we can send it back to the Cabinet. That's all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Green. We'll take this to the vote now. All those members in favour, please show. All those members against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That motion is passed unanimously. Motion 4, Councillor Maurice Cook, please read out and speak on your motion as printed on page 59 of the agenda.
I'd happy to do that, Madam Mayor. So the Council congratulates the Purfleet community, local volunteers, council officers and business partners for creating the first community pantry in Essex to serve the community of Purfleet.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak on it now. Thank you. So first of all, I'm modelling the aprons that are worn in the pantry, and I was very fortunate to be given one. Doesn't really get much use at home because I only heat up. I don't cook particularly well. so I might be able to benefit by some of the cooking classes that they're going to be holding there. So I'm actually honoured to bring this motion about the Purfleet Pantry to full council tonight. It's a brilliant example of community action at its finest. Driven by dedicated local volunteers, this initiative isn't just about affordable groceries. It's a hub for connection and support. The pantry shows the power of community-led projects, and it perfectly reflects our goals of empowering our residents, building stronger and more vibrant communities. Thank you to the volunteers, Joe, Terry, Becca, Kyra, Nicole, Scott, John, to Councillors Watson and Councillor Green, who tirelessly have supported this for over 2 years. One of the officers, and I know we talk about, but I do believe that this particular council officer does need to understand and be recognised. So Lynn Gittins is absolutely a force of nature, and she has done the most amazing work, and she does. And I know that for the next motion that will bring up about the big lunches, you know, she was absolutely instrumental in orchestrating those. So, and the contractors that we have managed to actually get involved and support this. So it's really been an absolute cross-community contractor effort that's gone on. So I think we all should support and say that this is a fabulous initiative, and to make this vision a reality is really, really impressive, being the first one in Essex. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder, please? Councillor Watson, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate? Reserve.
Reserve, please.
Okay. Do any other members wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Green, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Purfleet Community Pantry and Cafe began with the dedicated volunteers at the Purfleet Community Hub recognising a vital need among their neighbours and friends. This incredible community-driven initiative will serve as a lifeline for the residents of Purfleet-on-Thames, showing just how powerful it can be when a community comes together. Madam Mayor, we often hear misconceptions about Purfleet-on-Thames, but let me tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. I consider myself fortunate to be a ward councillor for such a diverse, compassionate and united community. I am proud to represent this ward and to see this vital community asset thriving. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rigby.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, thank you. I do support this motion. Doing the Children's Healthy Weight Management Task and Finish group at the moment, I probably will be in contact with you if that's all right, because we are looking at ways to increase education around food. A lot of young families, they don't know how to prepare, store, or let alone start cooking healthy food. So this is one of those excellent ways in that the community are doing. There are schools doing sort of food growing and teaching, you know, how to prepare food, and this is excellent. So if you don't mind, I might be in contact with you to get some details, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spate.
Very briefly, and Councillor Rigby, who's doing our task and fees group, well spotted. That's tremendous. I know you were going to be a lioness when you took charge of that, and that's absolutely fantastic. I attended the opening, and it was a marvellous occasion. And I would just, I think, in a way, possibly Val slightly underplayed the corporate partners, the businesses, that whatever. And I think there's a real lesson to be learned from what has been achieved in this venture in terms of when we're contracting, when we're tendering and whatever, and social responsibility. With the restraints that we're under as an authority, there's a huge wealth of people, businesses, skills, money, all sorts of things that's out there from people associated with the council. And if we just channel a little bit of energy and use this as a fantastic example, I'm sure all those folks would like it. So I hope that the lessons that have been learned are spread across the whole borough. Well done, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson, do you wish to speak as seconder of this substantive motion?
Yes, please. I'm a very, very chuffed ward member right now about the the pantry. So one of the things the council wanted to do is enable the community, and to be frank, we've just done that, and it's run with it. And this was the whole idea of 4 women, and that was Jo, Kira, Terry and Becky, sitting down saying, I can't get a pint of milk because the shop is shut. I can't afford that bread. These 4 women do not want to leave the garrison, because if you come off of a council estate like I have, like the garrison, the community spirit there is unbelievable. They raise their children there, and they are the heart and breath of it. So for £3, which they decided was a life membership, and you go in on a Monday or Thursday between 10 and 3, and you give £5 over and get £25 worth of fresh food, that was a godsend. And we've actually had people, I was there today, crying because they've never been able to afford that. To the point that I've donated money over for those that can't even afford the £3, can actually have got it now and been able to do it. The pantry was born with the community forum. They're very much part of it. And the amazing Lynn Gittins, who has fought tooth and nail to get this all on board, and also the social value. So every single thing that is in that pantry, chairs, everything, cooker, has been donated through social value by someone here. Even the last mayor gave a panini machine because she didn't understand what the coffee machine looked like. I would really recommend you all go down and see it, see what it's really about. And as I said, it's a really community joint venture that we as a council want to do going forward. The sad thing is, we should not be in this position where people are this poor, like normal, like income, like low in income. But they have come together and they've decided to do that. And they have got a wealth of ideas what they want to do now. I've just got to try and keep up with them all. They're even going to do some Meals on Wheels to the Mulberry Centre so they can have a little bit of a feel part of the pantry. So as I said, please go. I know some of the officers have been, and you'll be just as proud as what I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris-Cook, do you wish to have your right of reply? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, just to say thank you very much to everybody. And, you know, Councillor Watson said it really is an extremely impressive place. You know, they have freezers full of food. They have got great deals with local retailers to support that. And, you know, the fact now they're just looking, what else can we do? And as I say, you know, they're doing some cooking lessons, cooking on a budget, cooking with a slow cooker. I don't think it will help me, but I just think it's wonderful, and I really do hope it's the first of many. Sadly, as Councillor Watson said, you know, that we're in this situation now. But we are where we are, so let's look what we can do to help and support our communities. So I do ask that everybody does please support this.
Thank you. As we've had no one speak against the motion, are we in agreement that it passes? Thank you. Motion 5. Councillor Jones, please read out and speak on your motion as printed on page 59 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Isn't it good to end the night with some good stuff? You know, really good community coming together. Madam Mayor, after the successful big lunch events staged across Thurrock this summer, would all members and officers at Council send their congratulations to all that organised, supported and took part in the events, and also call on Council to continue supporting these events for future years? So can I carry on, Madam Mayor? Thank you. There's an old saying, Madam Mayor, give credit or praise where it is due. And this is exactly what this motion is doing in Council tonight. I am passing on the praise thanks to all those involved in organising, running and taking part in Thurrock's big summer lunch events. A fantastic success, something good and positive for Thurrock for once, rather than all the doom and gloom we hear. Shows Thurrock's community spirit at its best.
The Thurrock Big Lunch events were planned and organised by Thurrock Council's Community Development Team, led by Lynn Gittins and Natalie Smith. Lynn Gittins again, I tell you what a fabulous lady, or both of them are. This was in partnership with Active Essex, Start Thurrock, Impulse Leisure, Thurrock CVS, Tilbury Riverside, Seabrook Rise Community House, Friends of Graystown Park. It stated that between 500 to 1,000 people attended the events each time. Madam Mayor, you see firsthand the fun families were having at these events, and you attended most of them. In fact, you're more qualified to talk about this motion than what I am. You should be doing this bit. At the Coronum Big Lunch event, I believe the first one to be held in the area, I was amazed how well the event played out. It was packed with families, and you could see all the children running around and totally enjoying themselves. Really fun to see. And as the families were playing and doing whatever they were doing, they was being entertained by circus performers. They was all over the place amongst the families, some in high stilts, some doing tricks, all sorts were going on. There were stalls providing many services. The Thurrock Council stall was very busy. Council staff were engaging with residents. Impulse Leisure, talking to residents and children about the benefits of keeping fit and showing how some of the equipment should be used. Our own forum stall provided games that cost no more than 20 pence a game. And if you did not win, you still walked away with a sweet. I didn't get none. All the time this was going on, music was being supplied by a DJ and children's entertainer, a chap called Lee Stevens, who is a local resident from Purfleet-on-Thames, who wanted to provide his services for free. And what a brilliant job this man done, entertaining-wise. At one time, he called all the children to the front of the stall. Now, he entertained them for about 30 minutes with games. I mean, it's marvellous. You try and entertain your children, your grandchildren for 5 minutes. This guy, he kept them engrossed for a good 30 minutes and even got some of the parents involved. Now, these events not only rely on funding and support from the council, Thurrock CVS and a large group of volunteers to organise them, there's a lot of goodwill that helps to make these events a great success. All the big lunch events went smoothly, with no antisocial behaviour, tensions or disruption reported, with a diverse of communities coming together to enjoy the day. After the events, all the parks were left in excellent condition, with many volunteers clearing up. The Coronum event being cleaned up by our own local SS17 clean-up crew. Madam Mayor, this is Thurrock community coming together. And I'm going to finish with the words of the local DJ, children's entertainer Lee Stevens. He said, "It's my way of giving back to the community. It's a great feeling to see everyone enjoying themselves and not worrying about the financial burden, just having good, wholesome family fun." Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder for the motion? Thank you. Do you wish to speak now?
I'll defer till later. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any other members wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Morris-Cook.
Yes, I will be supporting this motion. I mean, they were great fun, and it was great to see so many people there enjoying themselves and actually being able to go to something during the summer holidays actually didn't cost an absolute fortune. So it really made it accessible for so many. And often, fortunately, I think there was only probably one day that the weather wasn't particularly great, but for the rest of them, we were very fortunate that the weather was really, really super and people had lots of picnics and everything. And as I say, once again, you look at the name of the person that was sort of in charge of it, Lynn Gittins. She did an amazing job. She really did. So absolutely happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Fox, do you wish? Oh.
Yeah, just to...
Sorry, I'm sorry, we've got Councillor Chukwu. I missed him, sorry. Councillor Chukwu.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I will be supporting this motion because I was there in the big lunch held in Chadwell. And I like what I saw because there was a lot of fun, there was a lot of activities, and the people were actually having fun, enjoying themselves. So I'll be supporting this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, this was an absolutely fabulous thing during the summertime that was arranged for the big lunch across the whole of the borough, and has been said numerous times in the last few minutes, our thanks has really got to go to Lynn Gittins for the work that she's put in to make all of these things happen. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. As, again, we've had no one speak against the motion, do we accept that the motion is passed? Is it agreed? Thank you. That concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I now declare the meeting closed at 10 o'clock. So thank you very much, everyone.